The contract arrives at 7:47 p.m. on a rain-soaked Tuesday in October, dressed in a charcoal gray Armani suit. Han Jun-ha stands in the doorway of Nana's table, briefcase in one hand, eviction notice folded in his breast pocket. The same notice Aisha Howard shoved into her grandmother's cookbook 3 weeks ago and hasn't opened since. He's not supposed to be here. The meeting was never scheduled, but real estate empires don't wait for permission. His Patek Philippe catches the dim overhead light as he extends his hand. A gesture both polite and invasive. Korean business etiquette wrapped in American directness. Aisha doesn't take it. She's wiping down the last table, chairs already stacked, mop bucket in the corner releasing the scent of lemon and exhaustion. Her apron is stained with 15 hours of cooking. Okra, collard greens, cornbread with her great-grandmother's recipe that survived the Middle Passage in oral tradition alone. She recognizes his name before he finishes introducing himself. It's printed on the eviction letter in serif font, clinical and final. Nana's table doesn't host visitors after 7, she says, voice sharp as the chef's knife still drying on the rack. Especially not real estate tycoons who turn family history into condos for people who've never tasted real food in their lives. Junha doesn't flinch, but something flickers behind his eyes. Recognition or regret, it's impossible to tell. His gaze drifts past her to the wall of photographs. 3 generations of black women holding the same wooden spoon, aprons tied with the same practiced knot. Smiles that survived Jim Crow and redlining and every wave of displacement Brooklyn could throw at them. He stops at one image in particular. A grandmother stirring a pot large enough to feed 40 people, steam rising like prayer. My mother had a spoon like that, he says, and the corporate veneer cracks just enough to let the human underneath show through. She used to make me yeokguk when I came home from school, always in the same pot, never measuring, just knowing. Silence stretches between them, filled only by rain drumming against the Victorian windows. Aisha wasn't expecting this, wasn't expecting him to see the photographs as anything other than aesthetic decoration, wasn't expecting him to carry his own ghosts into her sanctuary. Then he ruins it. I came to make a proposal, Junha continues, switching back to the clipped tone of a man whose closed deal's worth hundreds of millions. I'll buy the building for double market value. You keep the restaurant's name on the ground floor of the new development. Guaranteed 10-year lease. Win-win. Aisha laughs, not the joyful kind, but the laugh of a woman who's heard this song before and knows every bitter note. Win-win? You seriously think I'm going to sell my grandmother's soul for a fancy storefront in your luxury mall? She walks toward him, unintimidated by his height or his wealth or the invisible army of lawyers waiting in his phone contacts. This place isn't property, Mr. Han. It's an altar. And altars don't have market prices. Junha opens his mouth to respond, but at that exact moment, every light in the restaurant dies. The hum of the refrigerator cuts out. The streetlights visible through the windows blink into darkness. The entire block surrenders to blackout, leaving only the sound of rain and 2 strangers standing 3 feet apart in a sudden, absolute night. Aisha sighs, a sound so tired it carries decades. Of course. Con Ed's been threatening this for weeks. She moves through the dark with the confidence of someone who's walked this space 10,000 times, striking a match that flares orange and dangerous in the shadows. Candlelight blooms across the dining room as she lights tea candles scattered on every surface, a practice left over from her grandmother's childhood, when power was a luxury and preparation was survival. You should go, Aisha says without looking at him, her face half illuminated by flickering flame. Your driver's probably circling the block. I sent him home, Junha admits, and there's something raw in his voice now, stripped of negotiation. I wanted to walk, to see the neighborhood without glass between me and the streets. And what did you see? Aisha challenges, finally meeting his eyes. Investment opportunities? Demographics shifting in your favor? Another Brooklyn story you can sell to people who think brownstones buy them culture? He doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is quieter than before, almost confessional. I saw my mother's face in every window. She used to tell me that food is the only honest language, that you can lie with words and numbers, but never with what you cook for someone. Aisha studies him in the candlelight. This man in his $1,500 suit, standing in her grandmother's restaurant like a ghost who doesn't know he's haunting the wrong house. Against every instinct that's kept her alive through 3 waves of gentrification, she hears herself say, "When's the last time you ate real food?" Junha blinks, caught off guard. "What?" "Real food," Aisha repeats, moving toward the kitchen. Not conference room catering. Not protein powder in a blender bottle. Not takeout you eat standing up because sitting down feels like wasting time. When's the last time you sat at a table and tasted something made by hands that gave a damn? He doesn't answer because he can't. Because the truth is 3 months, maybe 6, maybe longer. Time blurs when every meal is fuel instead of memory. Aisha disappears into the kitchen and returns with a ceramic bowl covered in foil. She sets it in front of him with a wooden spoon that's worn smooth from decades of use. "Sit," she commands, and there's no negotiation in her tone. Junha sits. She peels back the foil, and steam rises carrying scents he hasn't encountered in years. Stewed chicken with herbs he can't name, rice cooked in broth instead of water, collard greens that taste like patience and necessity and love distilled into chlorophyll. His hand shakes slightly as he lifts the spoon. The first bite breaks something inside him that's been calcified for decades. The second bite unravels the rest. By the third, tears are streaming down his face. Silent, unstoppable, humiliating tears that he can't explain or defend or package into anything resembling control. "I taste my childhood," he whispers, voice wrecked. "How did you do that?" Aisha sits across from him, candlelight making her face both harder and softer than before. "I didn't do anything. My grandmother did. Her mother before her. Every woman who refused to let survival erase flavor." She pauses, watching him struggle to compose himself and fail. "Food remembers, Mr. Han, even when we forget." Junha sets down the spoon because his hands won't stop shaking. "I came here to buy you out, to solve a problem with money because that's the only language I know anymore." He looks at her directly now. No corporate armor left. "But I don't think money solves this, does it?" "Money never solves anything that matters," Aisha replies, and her voice carries the weight of every ancestor who knew that truth in their bones. "Money just decides who gets to keep pretending it does." The candles burn lower. The rain doesn't stop. And in the darkness of Nana's table, surrounded by photographs of women who fed their communities through every conceivable hardship, 2 people sit across from each other and recognize something neither expected to find: a mirror. If you've ever sat at a table where the food healed something money couldn't reach, where a meal became a confession, a truce, a beginning, then you know what happened next wasn't a business deal. It was something far more dangerous and unraveling. Junha doesn't leave when the power returns 30 minutes later. He should. His phone has 17 missed calls. His assistant has sent emergency texts. And somewhere across the river in Midtown, his empire is running without him for the first time in 23 years. But he remains seated at the corner table, bowl empty, wooden spoon resting against ceramic with the finality of ritual completed. Aisha moves through the restaurant, relighting the space with electric bulbs that feel harsh after candlelight. She doesn't ask him to leave, doesn't press the advantage, doesn't weaponize his vulnerability the way he half expects. Instead, she pours 2 cups of coffee, chicory dark, Louisiana style, inherited from a great aunt who migrated north during the second wave and brought the south in her suitcase. "Tell me about your mother," Aisha says, settling into the chair across from him with the ease of someone who's extracted 10,000 stories from customers over the years. Junha stiffens reflexively. Korean business etiquette trained him never to discuss personal matters with strangers, never to show weakness that could be leveraged, never to confess anything that couldn't be weaponized later. But the rules feel distant here, irrelevant in this space where photographs watch from every wall and the smell of ancestors lingers in the wallpaper. "She died 6 months ago," he says finally, the words tasting unfamiliar in his mouth. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. She lasted 8 weeks after diagnosis. I'm sorry, Aisha offers. And it's not empty politeness. It's the genuine condolence of someone who understands that grief isn't a problem to solve, but a country you inhabit for years. Junha nods, throat tight. I was in Singapore when she called to tell me, closing a deal worth 400 million. I told her I'd fly back the next week. He pauses, staring into coffee he hasn't tasted. She died 3 days later. I made the funeral. Barely. Did she know you were coming? Aisha asks gently. She was unconscious by then, Junha admits, and the shame in his voice is palpable. I sat by her bed for 40 minutes, held her hand, tried to remember the last conversation we had that wasn't logistics. Flight times, doctor appointments, financial planning. He finally looks up, meeting Aisha's eyes. I couldn't. Every memory was me leaving. Me promising I'd visit soon. Me choosing the next deal over the next dinner. Aisha doesn't offer platitudes, doesn't say he did his best, doesn't suggest his mother understood, doesn't smooth the jagged edges of his regret. She just listens, which is sometimes the only honest gift. She left me a recipe, Junha continues, reaching into his wallet with fingers that still tremble slightly. He unfolds a piece of paper worn soft as cloth, handwritten in her careful script, half Korean and half English, stained with oil and time and love. Her galbatang, the soup she made every year on my birthday when I was a child, before boarding schools and Ivy League and forgetting that anything mattered except winning. He slides the paper across the table toward Aisha, and she handles it with the reverence it deserves. Not as a recipe, but as a relic, a map to a country he can't return to. Her eyes scan the ingredients, the instructions written in the shorthand of someone who cooked by instinct and recorded reluctantly. Have you made it? Aisha asks, though she already knows the answer. No, Junha confesses, voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid. Of what? That I've forgotten how, he says, and the admission costs him. That my hands don't remember. That I'll taste it and realize how far I've drifted from the person she raised me to be. Aisha folds the recipe carefully and slides it back across the table. Fear means it still matters. The dangerous thing is when you stop being afraid because you've stopped caring. She drinks her coffee, eyes never leaving his face. Your mother left you a map home, Mr. Han. Question is whether you're brave enough to follow it. Junha pockets the recipe like a talisman. I don't know if I am. I've spent 30 years building walls. I'm not sure I remember how to dismantle them. Then maybe? Aisha says slowly, an idea forming in real time. You need someone to teach you. He looks at her sharply, suspicion flickering. What are you suggesting? A deal, Aisha replies, and there's mischief in her smile now, dangerous and deliberate. But not the kind you're used to. No contracts, no lawyers, just 3 dinners. 3 dinners, Junha repeats, confusion evident. You show up here, Aisha explains, leaning forward. 3 nights. You sit at this table. You eat what I serve. No phone, no emails, no emergency exits when things get uncomfortable. You stay. You taste. You be present. And in exchange? Junha asks, though he's already leaning in despite himself. In exchange, Aisha says carefully, weighing whether to trust this man who holds her eviction notice in his pocket. I'll teach you how to make your mother's galbatang, step by step, until your hands remember what your head forgot. Junha studies her across the table. This woman who owns nothing he can quantify, and everything he's lost. Logic screams that this is manipulation, a trap, an attempt to soften him before the real negotiation begins. But the part of him that tasted childhood in stewed chicken, the part that cried in front of a stranger without permission, that part whispers something different. This is the only honest offer you've received in decades. 3 dinners, he agrees, extending his hand across the table. This time Aisha takes it. Her palm is warm, calloused from years of knife work and hot pans and labor that leaves permanent marks. His is smooth, manicured, accustomed to signing papers that move millions, but never touching anything real. "First dinner is Thursday," Aisha announces, releasing his hand. "7 p.m. sharp. If you're late, the deal's off." "I'm never late," Junha replies, with the certainty of a man whose entire identity is built on punctuality and control. Aisha laughs, genuinely this time, full-throated and musical. "We'll see. Time moves different when you're not trying to commodify every second of it." Junha stands, smoothing his suit jacket in a habitual gesture that reveals how uncomfortable he is without armor. At the door, he pauses, rain still visible through the glass, the street beyond dark and uncertain. "Why are you doing this?" he asks without turning around. "Because," Aisha answers from across the dining room, surrounded by her grandmother's photographs and the lingering scent of meals that fed generations. "You reminded me of something I almost forgot." "What's that?" "That even people who look like enemies are just scared children inside," she says quietly. "And scared children need to be fed." Junha leaves without responding, but the words follow him into the rain-soaked Brooklyn night, echoing louder than any contract he's ever signed. Inside Nana's table, Aisha locks the door and leans against it, heart pounding with the reckless certainty that she's just invited a wolf to dinner. Or maybe, just maybe, she's invited a man who forgot he was human. Either way, everything changes Thursday. The eviction notice arrives by certified mail on Wednesday morning, 24 hours before the first dinner. Aisha signs for it with hands that don't shake, not because she's not terrified, but because she learned long ago that showing fear to systems designed to exploit it is a luxury she can't afford. The mail carrier, Mrs. Chen, has been delivering to this address for 19 years and knows exactly what the certified envelope means. "I'm sorry, baby," Mrs. Chen says. And the sympathy in her voice is genuine because she's watched this neighborhood transform from community to commodity in real time. "You need anything, you call me. My son's a lawyer. Well, he's still in law school, but he's smart." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," Aisha replies, tucking the envelope under her arm. "But I don't think law school can fight private equity." Inside the restaurant, Aisha doesn't open the notice immediately. She sets it on the counter next to her grandmother's cast-iron skillet, the one that's cooked 10,000 meals, survived 2 house fires, and carries seasoning built up over 80 years of use. The juxtaposition is deliberate. Paper that threatens erasure beside iron that refuses to forget. She opens it during the lunch rush lull, when the restaurant empties and silence amplifies every anxiety. The language is clinical, designed to strip emotion from displacement. Failure to vacate premises within 45 days will result in legal action and forcible removal. 45 days to dismantle a legacy that took 4 generations to build. 45 days to pack up photographs and recipes and the accumulated weight of women who refuse to disappear. At the bottom of the page, in smaller print, property management inquiries may be directed to H.J. Min Holdings, LLC. Han Junha's signature is nowhere visible, but his initials are embedded in the corporate entity like DNA in a crime scene. Aisha's first instinct is rage. Pure, justified fury at the man who cried in her restaurant less than 48 hours ago, who accepted her offer of 3 dinners while his lawyers drafted her death sentence. Her second instinct is darker. The suspicion that he knew, that the tears were performance, that she's been played by someone who weaponizes vulnerability as effectively as he deploys capital. But then she rereads the notice, focuses on the date at the top. Filed October 3rd. 2 weeks before Junha walked through her door, before the blackout, before the stewed chicken made him weep. The timeline doesn't support conspiracy, just the banal evil of systems that destroy without knowing what they're destroying. Aisha sits at the table where Junha sat, in the chair that still holds the faint impression of expensive fabric, and makes a decision. She will not cancel the dinner. She will not confront him with the notice. She will cook for him as promised, and she will watch carefully to see whether he's a man capable of growth or just another colonizer with good manners and generational trauma. Her phone rings. Marcus, her younger brother, calling from his Michelin-starred restaurant in Manhattan, where he plates Senegalese French fusion for people who treat meals as Instagram opportunities. She almost doesn't answer, but sibling obligation is a muscle memory stronger than resentment. "I heard," Marcus says without preamble, voice tight with the particular tension of someone who wants to say, "I told you so," but knows it's too cruel. "Mrs. Washington called me. Said you got the eviction notice." Word travels fast, Aisha replies, keeping her tone neutral. "You should have listened to me years ago," Marcus continues. And there's the judgment she expected. Should have modernized. Instagram, delivery apps, brand partnerships. You can't run a restaurant like it's 1952 and expect to survive gentrification. Grandma ran this restaurant exactly like this for 60 years. Aisha counters, voice hardening. Fed the neighborhood through redlining and white flight and every economic attack they could throw at us. It survived because it wasn't a business. It was a covenant. And now it's dead, Marcus says bluntly, and the words land like a slap. I'm not trying to be cruel, Aisha. I'm trying to be real. You want to honor Grandma's legacy? Let me help you. We'll open a new spot. Modern. Elevated. Same soul, better execution. Elevated is code for palatable to white people. Aisha snaps, years of simmering conflict boiling over. You've spent 10 years convincing yourself that diluting our food makes it legitimate, that if you plate it pretty enough and charge enough money, somehow it earns respect. But you and I both know what you're really doing. You're making sure white folks can consume us without tasting anything that makes them uncomfortable. Silence on the line, sharp as broken glass. That's not fair, Marcus finally says, voice low and wounded. Fair? Aisha laughs bitterly. Nothing about this is fair, Marcus. I'm getting evicted by a billionaire who probably can't even point to this neighborhood on a map. You're getting Michelin stars by making our grandmother's recipes accessible. And Grandma's in the ground, so she doesn't get a vote on what happens to the life she built. I'm trying to help, Marcus insists. I don't want your help, Aisha replies, and she means it. I want 45 more days to figure out how to fight this without compromising everything she stood for. She hangs up before Marcus can respond, before guilt can undermine resolve. Her phone buzzes immediately with texts, apologies, justifications, offers of capital she won't accept. But she silences it and returns to prep work. Tomorrow is the first dinner, and regardless of what happens after, she will cook with the same integrity her grandmother taught her. Honest food, made with clean hands, served to anyone hungry enough to taste truth. At 6:47 p.m., Aisha begins preparing tomorrow's menu. She's planned something deliberate, a meal that tells a story, that challenges assumptions, that forces Junha to reckon with what he's destroying, even if he doesn't realize that's what's happening. Braised oxtail with her great-grandmother's spice blend, rice cooked in bone broth, collard greens that take 6 hours to reach the right tenderness, cornbread with honey butter. Every dish is labor-intensive, impossible to rush, designed to teach patience to people who've forgotten how to wait for anything. As she works, she talks to her grandmother the way she's done every night since the funeral 4 years ago. I know you'd tell me to forgive him, Aisha says to the photograph on the wall. Her grandmother at 70, laughing with her whole body, wooden spoon raised in victory. You always said anger was poison we drink, hoping someone else dies from it. But Grandma, how do I feed the man who's killing us? The photograph doesn't answer, but Aisha can hear her grandmother's voice anyway, clear as memory. You feed him truth, baby, and then you watch to see if he's brave enough to swallow it. Aisha finishes prep at midnight, covers everything carefully, and locks the restaurant with the same ritual she's performed 10,000 times. Outside, Bedford-Stuyvesant sleeps uneasily, a neighborhood caught between history and inevitability, watching its identity dissolve one eviction notice at a time. Tomorrow, Junha will arrive for the first dinner. Tomorrow, she'll decide whether redemption is possible for men who profit from displacement. Tomorrow, the clock starts counting down 45 days to the end. Or maybe, if miracles still exist in gentrified Brooklyn, 45 days to a beginning neither of them can imagine yet. But tonight, Aisha allows herself one moment of uncertainty. One whispered question to the grandmother who taught her that food was resistance. What if I can't save this, Grandma? What if I'm the one who loses everything you fought for? The night offers no answer, except the distant sound of sirens and the smell of rain that won't quite fall. Thursday arrives with the particular anxiety of a test Aisha didn't study for, because the questions haven't been written yet. She opens the restaurant at 11 for the usual lunch crowd. Mrs. Washington holding court at her corner table, Pastor Jerome negotiating community politics over sweet tea, the Howard Street regulars who've been eating here since her grandmother's time. No one knows about the eviction notice yet. Aisha has kept it private the way you hide terminal diagnoses until you've figured out how to deliver the news without destroying hope. You seem nervous, baby. Mrs. Washington observes with the X-ray vision of elders who've survived too much to be fooled by performative calm. She's 71, retired civil rights organizer, neighborhood matriarch who remembers when Bedford-Stuyvesant was called Little Harlem, and black families could still afford to own property here. Just tired, Aisha deflects, refilling Mrs. Washington's tea. Mrs. Washington hums skeptically, reading the lie with practiced ease. Tired looks different than scared. And you look scared. Aisha sits across from her, dropping the pretense. If I told you I was having dinner with someone who might be able to help save this place, but that same person is also the reason it's in danger, what would you tell me to do? Mrs. Washington sets down her tea carefully, the way you handle fragile things. I'd tell you that people are complex, that the man who signed the order to evict me from my home 15 years ago probably had a family, probably loved someone, probably thought he was just doing his job. She pauses, eyes distant with memory. But I'd also tell you that complexity doesn't erase harm, and that before you sit at a table with someone, you better know whether they're coming to break bread or to break you. How do I know the difference? Aisha asks. You watch their hands, Mrs. Washington replies, leaning forward with the intensity of imparted wisdom. Not what they say, not what they promise. You watch whether their hands know how to give or whether they only know how to take. At 6:53 p.m., Aisha closes the restaurant to prepare for the first dinner. She set a single table, intimate, unavoidable, designed to make conversation mandatory rather than optional. Candles, because electric light feels too harsh for what she's attempting. Her grandmother's best dishes, the ones reserved for celebrations and funerals, and moments when aesthetics carry weight. And at the center, the wooden spoon, witness and talisman. At 6:59 p.m., Junha arrives. He's early, which tells her he's nervous too. People with power are never early unless they're trying to control the environment before others can claim space. But he's not wearing the Armani suit this time. Instead, he's dressed in dark slacks and a simple button-down, an attempt at casualness that sits awkwardly on a man who hasn't been casual since childhood. You're punctual, Aisha observes, opening the door. I'm terrified, Junha admits with startling honesty. I haven't had dinner with someone, really had dinner, not a business meal, in years. I'm not sure I remember how to do this. Then we're both scared, Aisha replies, and it's the most honest thing she can offer. Come in. Food doesn't wait for courage. The meal unfolds slowly, deliberately, course after course designed to pace conversation, to prevent rushing, to force presence. Aisha serves oxtail braised until the meat falls from bone, rich with her great-grandmother's spice blend that tastes like memory. Rice cooked in broth instead of water, each grain separate and perfect. Collard greens that required 6 hours of patience. Cornbread still warm from the oven. Junha eats with the focus of someone relearning a forgotten language. Between bites, Aisha asks questions, not about business or real estate, but about the person underneath the empire. When did you last cook for yourself? College, Junha answers after consideration. Sophomore year. Instant ramen with an egg cracked into it. After that, dining halls. Then assistants who ordered meals. Then forgetting that food could be anything except fuel. What did your mother think about that? Aisha probes gently. Junha sets down his fork, and the grief that crosses his face is unguarded. She stopped asking me to dinner after a while. I canceled too many times. Made too many excuses. Eventually, she learned that expecting me to show up was just inviting disappointment. He looks at Aisha directly. The last 5 years, she'd call and ask how I was, and I'd give her updates about deals and acquisitions and numbers. And she'd listen. Never complained. Never demanded I be different. Just listen to me describe a life she didn't recognize. Did she ever tell you she was proud of you? Aisha asks, though she suspects she knows the answer. Often, Junha replies, voice cracking slightly, which somehow made it worse. Because I knew she wasn't proud of the success. She was proud despite it. Proud of the child I used to be. The one she was still waiting to return. Aisha serves the next course. Her grandmother's sweet potato pie, recipe unchanged since 1947. What would that child think of who you became? Junha laughs, but it's hollow. He'd be horrified. That kid wanted to be a teacher, wanted to help people. Thought money was what you had enough of to be comfortable, not what you accumulated to prove worth. He takes a bite of pie, and something softens in his expression. God, this tastes exactly like my mother's Yulmu cha. The way sweetness can be comforting instead of decadent. Food is a time machine, Aisha says quietly. That's what Grandma used to say. That if you cook with intention, you can bring people home even when home doesn't exist anymore. They eat in companionable silence for several minutes. Then Junha asks the question Aisha has been waiting for. Why are you doing this? Really? Aisha considers lying, offering something noble or strategic. Instead, she tells the truth. Because I received an eviction notice yesterday. 45 days to vacate, and the entity evicting me traces back to your company. Junha goes completely still. You knew? When you made the 3 dinners offer, you knew. I didn't know when I made the offer, Aisha clarifies. I found out yesterday. The notice was filed 2 weeks before you walked through my door. And you're still feeding me? Junha says, something like wonder in his voice. I'm still feeding you, Aisha confirms. Because my grandmother taught me that you feed everyone who comes to your table. No exceptions. Even if they're the reason you're losing the table. Junha pushes back from the table abruptly, stands, begins pacing with the agitation of a man whose carefully constructed identity is fracturing in real time. I didn't know. I sign off on dozens of development projects. Teams handle neighborhood specifics. I never... He stops, forces himself to face her. That's not an excuse. That's worse. That I could destroy something this important and not even know because I was too busy managing portfolios to see actual human beings. So fix it, Aisha challenges. You have 45 days. Use them. How? Junha asks, and the helplessness in his voice is genuine. I'd have to fight my own board, unwind contracts, probably lose millions in penalties and lost opportunity costs. My shareholders would... Your shareholders don't eat here, Aisha interrupts, voice hardening. Your shareholders didn't build this with their hands, didn't feed people when they had nothing, didn't create sanctuary in a neighborhood that's been under attack for 50 years. She stands now too, meeting his height with the force of moral certainty. So you tell me, Mr. Han, what's worth more? The approval of people who reduce human beings to line items, or becoming the kind of person your mother would recognize? The question hangs between them like a blade. Junha doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is quiet but resolute. I can't promise I can stop this. But I can promise I'll try. Really try. Not throw money at it and hope it goes away, but actually fight for this place. Why? Aisha presses. Why would you risk everything for a restaurant you didn't know existed a week ago? Junha looks around the space, at the photographs on the walls, the worn tables that have hosted 10,000 meals, the kitchen visible through the service window where generations of women transformed survival into art. Because, he says finally, this is the first place in decades where I felt like I could breathe, where someone fed me and expected nothing except that I be present, where I cried and wasn't ashamed. He meets her eyes. And if I let this disappear without fighting, I'm not just destroying your grandmother's legacy. I'm destroying the last chance I have to become someone worth saving. Aisha holds his gaze, searching for deception, and finding only desperate sincerity. Second dinner is Saturday, she says finally. Same time. And Mr. Han? Bring your son. Junha flinches visibly. My son won't come. We haven't had a real conversation in 5 years. Then it's time to start, Aisha replies firmly. If you're going to learn how to fight for this place, you need to learn how to fight for your own family first. They're the same skill. Junha leaves shortly after, and Aisha watches him disappear into the Brooklyn night. She doesn't know if he'll follow through. Doesn't know if redemption is possible for men who've spent decades choosing profit over people. But she knows she set something in motion that can't be stopped now. A collision between his empire and her legacy, between his isolation and her community, between his money and her truth. Mrs. Washington's words echo as Aisha cleans the dishes. You watch their hands. Tomorrow she'll start paying attention, not to what Junha promises, but to what his hands actually do. Because promises are cheap in gentrified Brooklyn. But actions? Actions are the only currency that matters when everything you love is 45 days from disappearing. Saturday arrives with the weight of expectations Junha isn't prepared to meet. He's sitting in his Midtown penthouse at 4:17 p.m., phone in hand, Daniel's contact information on the screen, and a paralysis he hasn't experienced since he was 12 and had to confess to his mother that he'd failed a math test. Calling his son should not be more terrifying than negotiating billion-dollar acquisitions. But somehow it is, because business opponents can be intimidated or bought, while Daniel can only be disappointed. He calls at 4:23 p.m. Daniel answers on the 5th ring, voice wary in the way of children who've learned that parental attention usually precedes bad news. Dad? Daniel, Junha begins, and immediately hates how formal his voice sounds, how corporate. I wanted to ask if you'd have dinner with me tonight. Silence on the line. Then, is this about money? Because I told you I don't need... It's not about money, Junha interrupts, which is true, but also not the whole truth. It's about... I'm having dinner with someone who's teaching me something important, and she asked me to bring you. She? Daniel's voice shifts from wary to curious. Who is she? A chef, Junha answers carefully. Aisha Howard. She owns a restaurant in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Soul food, it's complicated. You're having dinner at a soul food restaurant in Bed-Stuy. Daniel repeats, disbelief evident. You. The man who eats protein powder for breakfast and calls it a meal. What's actually happening here, Dad? Junha closes his eyes, forcing honesty. I'm trying to be different. I know that sounds hollow. I know I've disappointed you more times than I can count. But I'm begging, for you to give me 3 hours tonight. Just 3 hours. And if at the end you still hate me, at least you'll hate me on a full stomach. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Daniel sighs. The particular sigh of someone deciding whether to hope one more time. What time? 7 p.m., Junha replies, relief flooding through him. I'll text you the address. I'll be there, Daniel says. But Dad, I'm bringing Tyler. Your boyfriend? Junha asks, proud of himself for not hesitating over the word. Yeah, Daniel confirms, voice defensive. If you're going to try being different, you can start by meeting the person I love. I'd like that, Junha says, and means it. See you at 7. At 6:45 p.m., Junha arrives at Nana's table to find Aisha in the kitchen surrounded by controlled chaos. She's preparing something ambitious. Multiple pots simmering simultaneously, ingredients spread across every surface, the air thick with competing aromas that somehow harmonize. Kimchi bubbles in a clay pot beside collard greens that have been simmering for hours. The fermented cabbage meeting slow-cooked Southern tradition in steam that carries both Seoul and Georgia. "What are you making?" Junha asks from the doorway. Aisha glances up, face flushed from heat, a streak of flour across her cheek. Fusion, Korean diasporic, kimchi jjigae with collard greens instead of napa cabbage, cornbread with sesame seeds and gochugaru. Your mother's myeokguk adapted with ingredients my grandmother used. She grins. Figured if we're going to do this, we might as well be honest about what it is. Two cultures colliding and seeing what survives the impact. That's... Junha searches for words. That's either brilliant or heretical. It's both. Aisha agrees cheerfully. Best food always is. Now get in here and help me. Your son will be here in 15 minutes, and I need these mandu folded. Junha hesitates. I don't know how to fold mandu. My mother tried to teach me once. I was terrible at it. Then you'll be terrible at it tonight too, Aisha replies, thrusting a bowl of filling and a stack of wrappers into his hands. But you'll be terrible at it together with me, which is the whole point. For the next 12 minutes, Junha destroys dumpling after dumpling, wrappers tearing, filling spilling, each attempt at the simple half-moon fold worse than the last. His fingers can't find the rhythm of pleating, can't remember the gentle pressure his mother once demonstrated in her kitchen 35 years ago. Aisha laughs so hard she has to lean against the counter for support. You're a billionaire, she gasps between laughter. And you're defeated by dough. I'm a disaster, Junha corrects, but he's laughing too. Genuine laughter that feels foreign in his throat. I'm a highly successful disaster. Finally, Aisha declares, wiping tears from her eyes. Some honest self-awareness. At 7:03 p.m., Daniel arrives with Tyler. Daniel in his standard uniform of black hoodie and glasses. Tyler in carefully curated streetwear that costs more than it appears. Daniel stops short when he enters the kitchen and sees his father covered in flour, holding a mutilated dumpling, laughing with a black woman who's looking at him like he's a particularly endearing catastrophe. Dad? Daniel says, as if confirming the person in front of him is actually his father and not a convincing replica. Daniel, Junha replies, setting down the dumpling with as much dignity as he can muster while covered in flour. Tyler, thank you for coming. Is that flour on your suit? Daniel asks, still processing the scene. Yes, Junha answers simply. Aisha's teaching me to cook. I'm terrible at it. You're learning, Aisha corrects, extending her hand to Daniel. You must be Daniel. I'm Aisha. And you must be Tyler. Welcome to Nana's table. Hope you're hungry, because I made enough food to feed the entire block. The dinner unfolds as a careful negotiation of histories and hurts. Aisha serves the Korean diasporic fusion she prepared, kimchi jjigae that tastes like Seoul and Georgia in conversation, the fermented tang of aged kimchi meeting the earthy bitterness of collard greens that have simmered for hours with garlic and onion. Cornbread studded with sesame seeds and kissed with gochugaru heat that transforms familiar southern comfort into something entirely new. The adapted myeokguk that honors both mothers, Junha's Korean tradition, and Aisha's southern roots meeting in a broth that carries multiple generations. Daniel is skeptical at first, waiting for the performance to crack, for his father to check his phone or make an excuse to leave early. But Junha doesn't leave. He stays present, asks questions about Daniel's design work, compliments Tyler's insights about gentrification patterns in Brooklyn. And when Daniel finally asks the question that's been building for years, why now, Dad? Why decide to try being human now? Junha doesn't deflect. Because I ran out of distractions, Junha answers quietly. Because your grandmother died, and I realized I'd spent 30 years choosing success over connection. Because I walked into this restaurant a week ago planning to buy it out, and instead I tasted my childhood and cried in front of a stranger. He looks at his son directly. And because Aisha told me that if I couldn't fight for my own family, I had no business fighting for hers. Daniel's expression shifts, not to forgiveness, but to something like cautious hope. You're serious? This isn't some midlife crisis that ends when you get bored? I can't promise I won't mess up, Junha admits. I've been emotionally absent for so long. I don't know if I remember how to be present, but I want to try, really try. And I'm asking, not demanding, asking, if you'd be willing to witness that attempt. Daniel glances at Tyler, who nods slightly, then back to his father. I'll witness it, but Dad? You need to know that witnessing means I'm going to call you out when you backslide. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine to spare your feelings. I wouldn't want you to, Junha replies. I need someone to hold me accountable. I've spent decades surrounded by people who only tell me what I want to hear. Aisha, watching this exchange from across the table, feels something shift in her assessment of Junha. He's not performing for his son. He's genuinely fumbling toward connection, awkward and uncertain, but sincere. Then Tyler asks the question that changes everything. Mr. Han, why are you having these dinners? Aisha said you made some kind of deal. Before Junha can answer, Aisha intervenes. I'm teaching him to cook his mother's galbatang. In exchange, She pauses, deciding in real time how much to reveal. He's helping me try to save this restaurant. Save it from what? Daniel asks, and his instincts, honed by years of disappointment, are already anticipating the answer. Eviction, Aisha says simply. I have 45 days to vacate. The development company that owns the building is tearing it down for luxury condos. Daniel's face hardens as he turns to his father. And let me guess. That development company traces back to you. Junha doesn't deny it. Yes. I signed off on the project 2 weeks before I met Aisha. I didn't know, which isn't an excuse. It's worse. It means I've built an empire so disconnected from human consequence that I can destroy places like this without even knowing they exist. So what? Daniel's voice rises, anger flooding back. You're using Aisha as cheap therapy? Trying to feel better about yourself by playing savior for the black woman you're displacing? Daniel, Junha begins, but Daniel cuts him off. No, Dad. This is exactly what you do. You find something broken, usually something you broke, and you throw money at it and call it redemption. But redemption requires actual change, not just performative guilt. Aisha, watching father and son spiral into familiar conflict, makes a decision. Daniel's right, she says, and both men turn to her in surprise. Your father may not know how to love properly, but he's trying. And trying is messy and imperfect, and often looks exactly like what you're seeing right now. A man who spent decades building walls, fumbling to dismantle them with hands that forgot how to be gentle. How can you defend him? Daniel demands. He's the reason you're losing everything. He's part of a system that's the reason I'm losing everything, Aisha corrects. There's a difference. Your father isn't evil. He's just been asleep. And watching someone wake up is uncomfortable because they thrash and stumble and hurt people accidentally. But I've seen enough people who refuse to wake up at all to recognize when someone's genuinely trying. Tyler speaks for the first time, voice thoughtful. Mr. Han, can I ask you something? What are you willing to lose to fix this? Junha meets Tyler's eyes. What do you mean? I mean, Tyler clarifies. It's easy to say you'll fight for this place when it's just words. But what happens when your board threatens to remove you? When shareholders sue? When the Korean business community ostracizes you for prioritizing a black neighborhood over profit? When choosing this restaurant means losing the empire you spent 30 years building? Would you still choose it? The table goes silent. It's the question everyone has been avoiding, because the answer determines whether this is redemption or performance. Junha doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the table, at the fusion dishes that represent two histories meeting, at the flour still dusting his hands, at his son who spent 5 years refusing to hope. Then he looks at Aisha, who's watching him with the quiet intensity of someone who's bet everything on the possibility that people can change. 3 months ago, Junha begins slowly, I would have told you the empire mattered most, that everything I built was my mother's legacy, that success was how I honored her sacrifice. He pauses, voice thickening. But when she died, you know what her last words to me were. The nurse told me later, when I arrived too late. She said, "Tell Junha I'm sorry I couldn't teach him how to come home. Not proud of my success. Not grateful for the money I sent. Sorry she failed to teach me the only thing that mattered." Daniel's anger softens slightly, replaced by recognition of shared grief. So to answer your question, Tyler, Junha continues, I don't know if I'm brave enough to lose everything. I don't know if I can withstand the pressure when it comes, but I know that if I don't try, if I let this place disappear because protecting it is inconvenient, then my mother was right. I never learned how to come home. And I'll spend the rest of my life as the wealthiest ghost in Manhattan, haunting my own empire. Aisha's eyes glisten, but she doesn't look away. That's the first honest thing you've said tonight. It's the first honest thing I've said in years, Junha admits. Daniel sets down his fork with deliberate care. Okay, I'll witness this. But Dad, I need you to understand. I'm not witnessing because I believe you'll succeed. I'm witnessing because I need to know, once and for all, who you really are when everything is on the line. That's fair, Junha replies. That's more than fair. The tension at the table shifts from confrontation to something more complex. Not resolution, but possibility. Aisha serves dessert, sweet potato pie with a Korean twist, brown sugar meeting black sesame, another bridge between worlds. As they eat, conversation becomes easier, more natural. Daniel sharing stories about his design work, Tyler explaining his music, Junha listening with the focus of someone relearning how to be interested in lives beyond his own. At 10:47 p.m., as Daniel and Tyler prepare to leave, Daniel pauses at the door. Aisha, thank you. For the food. And for whatever this is you're doing with my dad. I'm just feeding people, Aisha replies with a gentle smile. Your grandmother understood. Food is the most honest language we have. You can't lie with what you cook for someone. After they leave, Junha helps Aisha clean up, washing dishes side by side in companionable silence. He's clumsy with the cast iron skillet, nearly drops her grandmother's good plates. But Aisha doesn't correct him. She just watches his hands, the way Mrs. Washington taught her to do, looking for whether they know how to give or only how to take. Your son loves you, Aisha observes quietly. He's angry, but underneath that, he loves you. That's why it hurts him so much when you disappear. I know, Junha replies, voice thick. I don't know how to show him I love him back. I never learned the vocabulary. Then learn, Aisha says simply. You're learning to fold dumplings. You're learning to cook your mother's soup. You can learn to tell your son you love him. It's the same skill, showing up, being present, trying even when you fail. Junha nods, staring at the soapy water. Third dinner is when? Monday, Aisha answers. And this time, we're cooking your mother's galbatang, together, from start to finish. I'm terrified, Junha admits. Good, Aisha replies. Fear means you're awake, and awake is where we start becoming human again. Junha leaves at 11:30 p.m., flour still visible on his collar, the smell of kimchi and collard greens clinging to his clothes. As he walks through Bedford-Stuyvesant toward the subway, refusing Mr. Park's offer to drive him, choosing instead to walk through the neighborhood he's been destroying without knowing, he feels something he hasn't felt in decades, the possibility that becoming less might make him more. Behind him, Nana's table goes dark. Inside, Aisha sits at the table where her grandmother used to count receipts, and she allows herself one moment of dangerous hope. That maybe, just maybe, this impossible alliance between a Korean billionaire and a black chef might actually save the legacy she's been fighting to protect. Or maybe it will all collapse spectacularly, and she'll lose everything anyway. But at least she'll lose it having tried something beautiful and reckless, feeding the man who could destroy her, and watching to see if food could teach him how to choose differently. Either way, Monday will tell. Monday, they'll cook his mother's soup, and Aisha will discover whether Junha's hands remember how to create something that matters more than money. Sunday arrives with the particular silence of reckoning. Daniel sits in the Bushwick loft he shares with Tyler, coffee going cold in his hands, trying to process what happened at Nana's table. For 5 years, he's maintained careful distance from his father, responding to texts with one-word answers, avoiding phone calls, building a life deliberately separate from the Min Empire and everything it represents. But last night cracked something open, and now he's left holding contradictions he doesn't know how to reconcile. "You okay?" Tyler asks from the kitchen, where he's making breakfast with the same methodical focus he brings to composing music. "I don't know," Daniel admits. "I spent 5 years convincing myself my father was incapable of change, that he chose his empire over everything human. And then last night, I watched him fold dumplings so badly that a black woman I just met laughed until she cried. And he laughed too. Actually laughed. I don't remember the last time I saw him laugh." Tyler brings over plates, scrambled eggs, toast, the simple domestic ritual of Sunday morning. "You think he was performing?" Daniel considers this. "That's what I want to believe, because if he was performing, then I'm still right about him. But Tyler, I watched his hands shake when Aisha asked him about Grandma. That wasn't performance. That was a man who's been holding grief in a vault for 6 months, and someone finally picked the lock. So what are you afraid of?" Tyler probes gently. "That he'll try for 3 weeks and give up when it gets hard," Daniel answers immediately. "That this is just another project for him. Fix relationship with son. Check it off the list between merger negotiations. And I'll hope again, like I hoped when I was 10 and he promised to come to my school play. When I was 15 and he said we'd go to Korea together. When I was 21 and he swore he'd be at my graduation." His voice hardens with accumulated disappointment. "I've run out of hope, Tyler. I'm empty." Tyler reaches across the table, takes Daniel's hand. "You're not empty. Empty people don't get that angry. You're full. Full of all the love you've been trying to give him for 26 years and he hasn't known how to receive." Daniel's phone buzzes. A text from his father. "Thank you for coming last night. Would you have lunch with me today? Just us. I want to talk. Really talk. Not the way I usually talk where I'm planning the next sentence instead of listening. I'll come to you. Anywhere you want." Daniel stares at the message. In 5 years, his father has never asked to come to his neighborhood, never suggested meeting on Daniel's terms, never acknowledged the monologue disguised as dialogue pattern that's defined their relationship. "He wants to have lunch," Daniel says, showing Tyler the phone. "You going to go?" Tyler asks. "I don't know," Daniel replies. "What if this is the time he actually shows up? And I'm not there because I was too scared to hope one more time? Then text him back," Tyler suggests. "But Daniel, choose somewhere public, somewhere you feel safe. Don't make it easy for him to perform." Daniel types a response. "McCarran Park, 1 p.m. Bring your own food. We'll have a picnic." The answer comes immediately. "I'll be there." At 12:53 p.m., Daniel arrives at McCarran Park with Tyler, carrying sandwiches from the bodega and canned coffee. He chooses a spot deliberately. Open, visible, impossible to hide in if things go badly. At 12:58 p.m., Junha arrives carrying a shopping bag, slightly out of breath, having clearly rushed to be early. "I brought kimbap," Junha says, holding up the bag like an offering. "I made it this morning. It's terrible. The rice fell out of half of them. But I made it." Daniel stares at his father. "You made kimbap? You don't cook." "I didn't cook," Junha corrects, sitting down on the grass with visible awkwardness. "But Aisha said that if I'm going to learn my mother's galbitang tomorrow, I should practice following instructions. So I found Grandma's kimbap recipe in the notebook she left me and I tried. It's inedible," Probably, but I tried. Daniel opens the container. The kimbap is indeed a disaster. Asymmetrical, rice escaping, vegetables visible where they should be hidden. He takes a piece anyway, bites into it. It tastes like childhood. Not perfect, but honest. Made by hands that tried. It's not inedible, Daniel says quietly. It tastes like Grandma's kitchen, like Saturday mornings when I was little, before boarding school, before you got too busy to come home. Junha's composure cracks visibly. I'm sorry. For those Saturdays. For every time I chose a deal over watching you grow up. For making you feel like you had to earn my attention instead of knowing you always had it, even when I was too broken to show it properly. Why are you telling me this now? Daniel asks. And it's not hostile. It's genuine confusion. What changed? Your grandmother died, Junha answers simply. And when I went through her things, I found a box. It was full of every letter I sent her from boarding school, from college, from business school. Letters where I told her about my life, asked her questions, shared my fears. Letters she saved for 40 years. He pauses, voice breaking. And underneath all my letters, there was one she wrote to me but never sent. Want to know what it said? Daniel nods, throat tight. It said, Junha, my beautiful son, I'm watching you build an empire, and I'm so proud. But I'm also terrified. Because the higher you build, the further you get from the ground where love grows. Don't forget that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. Come home sometimes, not to visit, to stay. Junha wipes his eyes roughly. She wrote that 20 years ago, and I never came home. Not really. I visited. I sent money, but I never stayed. Tyler, who's been quietly witnessing this, speaks. Mr. Han, what do you want from Daniel? Junha looks at Tyler, then back at his son. I want another chance, not to erase the past. I can't undo 20 years of absence, but to try building something new, messily, imperfectly. The way I'm learning to fold dumplings and cook soup. Badly at first, but showing up anyway. And when it gets hard, Daniel challenges. When your board calls an emergency meeting and you have to choose between fixing this Bed-Stuy disaster and having dinner with me, what happens then? Honestly, Junha replies, I don't know. I've spent 30 years prioritizing wrong. Breaking that pattern won't happen overnight. But I can promise you this. If I backslide, I won't lie about it. I won't make excuses. I'll admit I messed up, and I'll try again. Daniel eats another piece of terrible kimbap, considering. I need you to understand something, Dad. I'm not doing this to save you. I'm not your redemption project. If I give you another chance, it's because I need to know, for myself, for my own life, whether people can actually change, or whether we're all just stuck being who we were at 25. That's fair, Junha agrees. More than fair. They sit in McCarran Park for 2 hours. They talk about Daniel's design work. Really talk, with Junha asking follow-up questions and remembering details. They discuss Tyler's music, the gentrification reshaping Brooklyn, the ways systems crush communities while individuals convince themselves they're just following protocols. And slowly, carefully, they begin constructing something fragile and new. Not father and son as it was, but father and son as it might become. At 3:17 p.m., as they're packing up, Daniel says, I'll come to the next dinner, the one where you cook Grandma's galbatang with Aisha. But Dad, if you're going to do this, if you're really going to fight for that restaurant, I want to help. Junha stops mid-motion. How? I'm a designer, Daniel replies. I know branding, community organizing, grassroots campaigns. If you're going up against your own board, you'll need public support. You'll need the neighborhood on your side. You'll need a story that's bigger than billionaire versus shareholders. He glances at Tyler, who nods encouragingly. Let me help you tell that story. Not for you, for Aisha, for Nana's table, For every place like it that's disappeared while people like us stood by and did nothing. Junha embraces his son. Awkward, uncertain. The hug of a man relearning physical affection. Thank you. God, Daniel, thank you. Daniel doesn't relax into the hug immediately, but he doesn't pull away either. It's a beginning. Imperfect, tentative, but real. That evening, alone in his penthouse, Junha pulls out his mother's galbatang recipe. He reads it slowly, trying to decipher her handwriting. The mixture of Korean and English. The instructions that assume knowledge he doesn't have. Tomorrow, he'll cook this with Aisha. Tomorrow, he'll try to create something his mother made effortlessly, using hands that have only ever signed contracts. He's terrified. But for the first time in decades, he's terrified of the right things. Failing someone who matters, disappointing people who've given him undeserved chances, learning that he's too broken to be fixed. Tomorrow will be the third dinner. The final test of whether food can teach a man to come home. Monday arrives with the weight of ritual. Junha arrives at Nana's table at 5 p.m., early, because Aisha told him galbatang takes hours, and patience doesn't wait for convenience. He's carrying his mother's recipe in a protective sleeve, handled with the reverence of sacred text. Aisha is already in the kitchen, ingredients arranged with the precision of ceremony. Short ribs that need blanching, radish that requires careful cutting, garlic and ginger, and the particular alchemy of seasonings that transform bone into medicine. You ready? Aisha asks, tying her apron. No, Junha admits. But I'm here anyway. That's all cooking is, Aisha replies. Showing up scared and trying anyway. Now let me see the recipe. They spread his mother's handwritten instructions on the counter. Aisha reads it carefully, occasionally translating Korean phrases Junha has forgotten, interpreting the shorthand of a woman who cooked by instinct and recorded reluctantly. Your mother was a real cook, Aisha observes. She didn't measure, she felt. See here? She wrote, enough soy sauce. That means you taste as you go, adjust in real time. It means you have to be present. I don't know how to be present, Junha confesses. My entire career is built on being 3 steps ahead, planning the next move before the current one finishes. Then this is going to hurt, Aisha says honestly. Because cooking your mother's soup requires you to be exactly where you are, doing exactly what you're doing, trusting the process instead of controlling the outcome. They begin. First step, blanching the short ribs to remove impurities. Junha performs this mechanically, following instructions like a contract clause. But when Aisha makes him stop and actually look at the water, the way it clouds, the foam that rises, the physical manifestation of removing what's unwanted, something shifts. See that? Aisha points to the murky pot. That's what happens when you give yourself permission to release what doesn't serve you. Gets messy first. Looks worse before it looks better. But necessary. Junha stares at the cloudy water, and he's no longer seeing short ribs. He's seeing 30 years of accumulated harm, the projects he approved without investigating, the communities he displaced without knowing their names, the son he loved but never learned how to show it. How do you know when you've removed enough? He asks quietly. When the water runs clear, Aisha answers. You'll know. Your body will know. You just have to trust it. They drain the first water and start fresh. Clean water, clean pot, clean start. Aisha guides him through adding the ribs back, building the broth slowly, garlic, ginger, radish cut into chunks large enough to hold their shape through hours of simmering. She makes him taste at every stage, teaching his palate to recognize balance. What do you taste? She asks after he samples the early broth. Nothing yet, Junha replies. It's just bones and water. Look deeper, Aisha insists. Taste isn't just flavor, it's intention. What do you taste when you know your mother made this for you? When you know she stood over a pot just like this, thinking about you. Junha tastes again, slower this time. And suddenly he's 9 years old, standing in his mother's soul kitchen, watching her stir a pot before school. He's 17, coming home from the airport after boarding school acceptance, finding her cooking this exact soup despite his protests that he wasn't hungry. He's 25, refusing her invitation to dinner because he had a client meeting, not knowing he had 15 years left with her and squandering most of them. I taste. His voice breaks. I taste every dinner I refused. Every time I said I was too busy. Every moment she tried to feed me and I treated it like an obligation instead of a gift. Aisha doesn't offer comfort. She just hands him a wooden spoon and says, "Then cook like you're apologizing. Cook like you're saying all the things you didn't say when she was alive. She can't hear you anymore, but your hands can say it anyway." For the next 3 hours, they tend the galbatang together. The kitchen fills with steam that smells like Seoul and Brooklyn in conversation, like his mother and Aisha's grandmother meeting across time and geography to teach the same lesson. Presence is the only currency that matters. Daniel arrives at 7:30 p.m. with Tyler and a surprise guest, Mrs. Washington, who insisted on coming when Daniel mentioned what they were cooking. "A man cooking his mother's soup," she'd said. "That's sacred business. I'm witnessing." They set the table together. Aisha's grandmother's best dishes, candles that turn the restaurant into sanctuary, the wooden spoon placed at the center like an altar offering. When the galbatang is finally ready, broth clear and rich, meat falling from bone, radish tender but structured, Junha ladles it into bowls with hands that shake from more than exhaustion. The first taste is silence. Then Daniel speaks, voice thick. "Dad, this tastes exactly like Grandma's." "Exactly." Junha can't respond because he's crying again. Not the shocked tears of the first dinner, but deeper grief, the kind that comes from doing something right after decades of doing everything wrong. Aisha reaches across the table and squeezes his hand. "You did good. Your mother would be proud." "How do you know?" Junha asks through tears. "Because I'm a mother," Mrs. Washington answers unexpectedly. "And I know that when your child finally learns what you spent their whole life trying to teach them, even if it comes too late, even if you're not there to see it, it still matters. She knows, baby. Wherever she is, she knows." They eat the galbatang slowly, reverently. And as they eat, they tell stories, Daniel sharing memories of his grandmother, Tyler talking about his own mother who cooked Southern food in the Bronx, Mrs. Washington recounting how food sustained the civil rights movement in ways history books never record. Aisha listens, occasionally adding her grandmother's wisdom, weaving all these stories into a single narrative. That food is how we remember, how we resist, how we love when language fails. At 10 p.m., as they're cleaning up, Junha accidentally knocks over the flour canister. White powder explodes across his suit, the same charcoal Armani he wore the first night, now adorned with yet another layer of evidence that he's been trying. He freezes, old instincts screaming that this is disaster, that he needs to fix it immediately, that appearance matters. But then Aisha laughs, that same full-throated, genuine laugh from the dumpling disaster. And Daniel laughs. And Tyler laughs. And Mrs. Washington laughs so hard she has to sit down. And suddenly, Junha is laughing too, standing in a kitchen covered in flour, wearing proof of his willingness to be messy, surrounded by people who've chosen to witness his transformation despite every reason not to. "You look ridiculous," Daniel says, still laughing. "I feel ridiculous," Junha admits. "And also, I feel more like myself than I have in 30 years. That's because flour suits you," Aisha declares. "Money made you a ghost. But flour? Flour makes you human." As everyone prepares to leave, Mrs. Washington pulls Junha aside. "Young man, I need to tell you something. I've been watching you for 3 weeks now, watching to see if you're real or if you're running a long con." "And?" Junha asks, genuinely nervous about her verdict. "And you're clumsy as hell," Mrs. Washington replies bluntly. "You don't know how to cook. You fumble through conversations. You're clearly terrified of every dinner. But you show up anyway. That's the difference between performance and transformation. Performance gets easier with practice. But transformation stays hard because you're doing something real. Does that mean you trust me? Junha asks. Mrs. Washington considers him with the X-ray vision of someone who survived too much to be fooled. It means I'll watch what you do next. Because these dinners? They're the easy part. You fed your soul. Now we'll see if you can fight for ours. After everyone leaves, Aisha and Junha sit at the table where this all began. The galbatang pot sits on the stove, still warm. Proof that he remembered something he thought was lost forever. 3 dinners complete, Aisha says. You held up your end of the deal. I taught you your mother's soup. And now I hold up mine, Junha replies. 45 days became 42 while we were cooking. We need to move fast. What's your plan? Aisha asks. Junha pulls out his phone, opens a document he's been drafting between dinners. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. I'm proposing we dissolve the Bedford-Stuyvesant development and donate the land to create a community-owned cooperative. Daniel and Tyler are working on a public campaign. Stories from the neighborhood, history of Nana's table, documentation of what gentrification has already destroyed here. We'll need community support, media pressure, legal precedent for rejecting development contracts. They'll fight you, Aisha states flatly. Your board will try to remove you. Shareholders will sue. You could lose everything. I know, Junha agrees. Tyler asked me Saturday what I'm willing to lose. And I've been thinking about that question every night since. The answer is anything except this. He gestures around the restaurant, at the photographs on the walls, the wooden spoon still on the table, the kitchen where he learned to cook with intention instead of ambition. Because if I lose this fight, I'm just a failed CEO. But if I don't fight at all, I'm the man my mother mourned, the son who never came home. Aisha studies him for a long moment. Then she extends her hand across the table. Then let's fight, together, messily, the way everything worth saving gets saved. Junha takes her hand. Her palm is warm, calloused from decades of cooking, marked by the evidence of labor that matters. His is soft, accustomed to signing papers, finally learning to create instead of just acquire. They sit there for a long time, hands clasped across the table, flour still visible on his suit, the smell of galbatang lingering in the air. And in that moment, they're not billionaire and chef, not gentrifier and victim, not even allies in an impossible fight. They're just 2 people who've learned the same hard lesson, that the only thing that survives us is what we feed, and not with money, but with presence, attention, the willingness to show up covered in flour and laugh at the mess we make while trying. Tomorrow, the real battle begins. But tonight, they've already won something more valuable than any real estate empire. They've remembered what it means to be human in a world that profits us into ghosts. And sometimes, remembering is the revolution. If you're wondering whether courage looks like corporate boardrooms or just a man learning to fold dumplings badly while a woman teaches him that mess is part of becoming real, stay with us. Because what happens next will test whether dinner can actually heal what money broke. Subscribe so you don't miss how this impossible fight unfolds. The headline breaks on Tuesday morning, 41 days before eviction. Someone, a diner with a phone, a neighbor with a camera, the universe with its talent for forcing private moments into public spectacles, captured Junha leaving Nana's table at 11:47 p.m. on Monday, flour still visible on his suit, smiling in a way he hasn't smiled in photographs since before his mother died. The image goes viral within 6 hours. Billionaire CEO caught slumming in Bed-Stuy. Romance or gentrification guilt, reads the New York tabloid headline. The article is brutal, reductive, designed to turn nuance into controversy. Han Junha, CEO of H. Jaemin Holdings, the conglomerate behind multiple luxury developments across Brooklyn, was photographed leaving Nana's Table, a struggling soul food restaurant in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Sources close to the development project confirm that H. Jaemin Holdings owns the building and has issued eviction notices. Is this a case of a guilty billionaire playing savior, or something more calculated? By noon, The story has been picked up by major outlets. Korean American media runs their own angle. Han Jun-ha, dating outside community. Board concerns mount. Conservative shareholders issue statements expressing concerns about leadership judgment. Progressive outlets frame it differently. Can a billionaire unlearn gentrification? One chef is trying to teach him. Aisha discovers the headlines when her phone explodes with notifications at 7:23 a.m. 43 missed calls, 200 Instagram mentions, reporters already gathering outside Nana's table with cameras and microphones. She reads the articles with rising nausea, watching her grandmother's legacy reduced to clickbait, her genuine attempt to teach someone compassion reframed as either manipulation or naivety. Marcus calls within minutes. Aisha, what the hell did you do? I fed someone, Aisha replies, voice tight. That's what we do. That's what Grandma taught us. You fed the man who's evicting you, Marcus counters. And now it's all over the news. His board is going to use this. They're going to say he's compromised, remove him, and fast-track the development. You just gave them ammunition. Then what should I have done? Aisha demands. Refused to feed someone who was hungry? Turned away someone who was trying to learn how to be human? That's not who we are, Marcus. That's not who Grandma raised. Grandma's dead, Marcus says bluntly. And her principles won't save you when the bulldozers show up in 41 days. Aisha hangs up before she says something irreparable. Outside, the press is multiplying. Cameras, satellite trucks, reporters doing stand-ups with Nana's table in the background, like it's a crime scene instead of a sanctuary. Jun-ha discovers the headlines during a 6:00 a.m. conference call with Tokyo investors. His assistant interrupts, unprecedented breach of protocol, to inform him that the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and 3 Korean financial dailies are requesting comment about the Bedford-Stuyvesant situation. By 7 a.m., his phone has 17 voicemails from board members, all using variations of the same phrase. We need to talk, immediately. The emergency board meeting is called for 2 p.m. Jun-ha arrives to find the conference room filled with corporate hostility. 12 board members, 6 major shareholders, a phalanx of lawyers, all wearing the particular expression of people who've already decided the verdict before hearing the defense. Richard Chen, the board's senior member and largest outside shareholder, doesn't waste time on pleasantries. Jun-ha, we've known each other 20 years, so I'm going to be direct. This situation with the Bedford-Stuyvesant property has become a liability. The optics are catastrophic. You're photographed leaving a restaurant we're evicting, looking like you're personally involved with the owner. Shareholders are calling for your removal. I am personally involved, Jun-ha replies calmly, though his hands are clenched beneath the table. But not the way you're implying. I'm learning from her. About community, about legacy, about the human cost of development projects we approve without ever seeing the faces behind the addresses. That's touching, interrupts Sarah Park, general counsel, voice dripping with sarcasm. But it's also legally problematic. You have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value. Developing a personal relationship with someone whose property we're acquiring creates a conflict of interest that could expose us to lawsuits. Then I'm proposing we don't acquire it, Jun-ha states, and the room erupts. Excuse me? Chen's voice cuts through the chaos. I'm proposing we dissolve the Bedford-Stuyvesant project, Jun-ha repeats, louder now. We donate the land to create a community-owned cooperative. We take the financial hit. It'll cost us approximately $47 million in lost development opportunity and contract penalties. But we preserve something irreplaceable. Silence. Then laughter. Actual laughter from multiple board members, as if he's told an absurd joke. $47 million, Chen repeats slowly. To preserve a failing restaurant that generates maybe $200,000 in annual revenue? Jun-ha, have you completely lost your mind? No, Jun-ha replies. I found it. For the first time in 30 years, I've found the part of myself that remembers why we do this work. It's not to accumulate wealth. It's to build communities. And this project destroys community instead of building it. Sarah Park leans forward. Let me be very clear. If you pursue this proposal, the board will vote to remove you as CEO. We have the authority under the corporate bylaws to do so if we determine you're acting against company interests. I understand, Junha says. I'm prepared for that consequence. Are you prepared to lose everything? Chen asks, and there's almost pity in his voice now. Your position, your influence, the empire you've spent 3 decades building, for a restaurant and a woman you've known 3 weeks? Junha thinks about his mother's recipe, folded in his wallet, about Daniel's cautious hope, about Aisha's grandmother's wooden spoon, about flour on his suit and laughter on the walls. Yes, he answers simply. I'm prepared to lose the empire to save my soul. Because I finally understand what my mother tried to tell me. Success without humanity is just expensive emptiness. The board votes within 15 minutes, 11-1. Only Junha votes against his own removal. The resolution is immediate. Han Junha is stripped of CEO title effective immediately, retained only as a minority shareholder with no operational authority. Richard Chen is appointed interim CEO with full authority to proceed with all existing development projects, including Bedford-Stuyvesant. For what it's worth, Chen says as Junha packs his belongings from the office he's occupied for 23 years. I hope she's worth it. Because you just threw away a fortune for someone who probably can't even save you a table at her restaurant once it closes. Junha doesn't respond. He walks out of H.J. Min Holdings at 4:47 p.m., no longer CEO, no longer empire builder, no longer the man his mother mourned. He's just Junha now, unemployed, diminished in the eyes of everyone who measures worth in zeros, but somehow lighter than he's felt in decades. He goes directly to Nana's table. The press is still gathered outside, and cameras flash as he approaches. Mr. Han, is it true you've been removed as CEO? Are you dating Aisha Howard? Was this relationship transactional? Junha ignores them all. He knocks on the door. Aisha locked it hours ago to escape the media circus. She opens it cautiously, sees him, and immediately pulls him inside. I'm so sorry, Aisha says before he can speak. I never meant for this to happen, for you to lose everything because of me. I didn't lose everything, Junha corrects gently. I lost a company. There's a difference. And I didn't lose it because of you. I chose this, consciously. Because for the first time in my life, I chose something that matters over something that just profits. But they're going to evict me anyway, Aisha says, voice breaking. The new CEO already released a statement. Development proceeds as planned. Eviction stands. You sacrificed everything and it changed nothing. It changed me, Junha replies. That's not nothing. They sit at the table where this whole impossible thing began. Outside, camera flashes continue intermittently. Inside, silence except for the sound of 2 people trying to figure out how to fight an empire with nothing except conviction. What do we do now? Aisha asks. Junha pulls out his phone. Now we fight, not with corporate power. I don't have that anymore. We fight with story, with community, with every tool gentrification forgot to monetize. He shows her his phone. Daniel has already launched a website, Save Nana's Table. Org, with the history of the restaurant, testimony from neighborhood residents, documentation of what Bedford-Stuyvesant has already lost to development. Tyler's Music Collective is organizing a benefit concert. Mrs. Washington has mobilized church networks across Brooklyn. Pastor Jerome is calling in favors from city council members. You did this? Aisha asks, scrolling through the campaign. Daniel did this, Junha corrects. I just told him what was happening. He built the movement. Turns out my son inherited his grandmother's gift. He knows how to bring people home. Aisha's eyes fill with tears. This might not work. They have lawyers, money, contracts. We have stories and hope. That's not a fair fight. No, Junha agrees. It's not fair, but it's honest. And I'd rather lose honestly than win the way I've been winning for 30 years, by not caring enough to see what I was destroying. At 7 p.m., the community starts arriving. Mrs. Washington with her church committee, Daniel and Tyler with design students from Pratt, Pastor Jerome with legal volunteers, neighbors who've eaten at Nana's table for decades, bringing more people, more stories, more evidence that some things matter more than profit margins. They transform the restaurant into campaign headquarters. Daniel projects the website on the wall, showing how to share testimony, how to pressure city council, how to make gentrification visible instead of abstract. Aisha cooks, because that's what she does, what her grandmother taught her, what survives every attempt at erasure. She feeds the organizers, the activists, the neighbors who've shown up to fight for a table that's fed them for generations. And Junha, former billionaire, former CEO, former ghost in an expensive suit, washes dishes. He stands at the sink for hours, cleaning plates so Aisha can keep cooking, so the movement can keep eating, so community can keep gathering around the truth that some losses are unacceptable even when they're legal. At 11:30 p.m., as the crowd begins to thin, Mrs. Washington approaches Junha at the sink. "You lost your company today," she observes. "Yes," Junha confirms. "And you're washing dishes," she continues. "Yes," he repeats. Mrs. Washington studies him with the penetrating gaze of someone who's witnessed every kind of transformation and knows which ones are real. "You're going to be okay, baby. You lost the wrong things to find the right ones. That's called grace." After everyone leaves, Aisha and Junha sit in the empty restaurant. 41 days until eviction. No corporate power to stop it. Just a website, a movement, and a growing chorus of voices saying, "Not this place, not this legacy, not without a fight." "What if we lose?" Aisha asks quietly. "Then we lose together," Junha replies. "And at least we'll have tried something beautiful. At least we'll have fed people and told the truth and chosen community over capital." Aisha reaches across the table, takes his hand. "Thank you for choosing this, for choosing us." "Thank you," Junha responds, "for teaching me there was something worth choosing." Outside, the city that never sleeps continues its relentless transformation. Bulldozers waiting, contracts ready, gentrification's machinery humming inevitably forward. But inside Nana's table, two people hold hands across a table and believe, despite every rational reason not to, that dinner might heal what money broke. Tomorrow, they'll find out if belief is enough. Wednesday morning arrives with the particular cruelty of consequences. The headlines have evolved overnight, feeding on the board meeting results like sharks on blood. Disgraced CEO loses empire over soul food romance. H.J. Min Holdings stock surges 8%. After Junha removal, investors celebrate return to rational leadership. Korean business media is particularly brutal. Dishonor and downfall. How Han Junha destroyed family legacy for inappropriate relationship. Junha wakes in his penthouse for what he suspects will be one of the last times. The apartment is corporate property, and the new management will want him out within weeks. His phone contains 47 messages from former colleagues expressing various combinations of pity, schadenfreude, and strategic distance. Only one message matters. From Daniel, sent at 2:37 a.m. "Dad, I'm proud of you. For the first time in my life, I'm proud. The website has 47,000 signatures. Keep going." Junha sits on the edge of his bed. Imported Italian sheets, mattress that cost more than most people's cars, and laughs. Not bitterly, but with genuine amusement at the absurdity of losing a fortune and feeling wealthier. His mother would understand. She'd probably make him galbitang and say nothing. Just let the soup say everything that words couldn't. At Nana's table, Aisha is dealing with a different kind of consequence. Her landlord, technically H.J. Min Holdings, now controlled by people with no sentimental attachment to redemption narratives, has accelerated the eviction timeline. New notice delivered by process server at 7:12 a.m. Property must be vacated within 14 days. Failure to comply will result in forcible removal and legal action for damages. 14 days. The deadline has collapsed from 41 to 14 because she dared to feed the wrong person. Marcus calls within the hour, voice heavy with, "I told you so." "They moved up the eviction," he says flatly. "I just got off the phone with their legal team. They're making an example of you, Aisha. This is what happens when you embarrass powerful people." "I didn't embarrass anyone," Aisha replies, exhausted. "I fed someone. That's all I did." "You fed someone who was destroying you," Marcus counters. "And now you're losing everything 27 days early." "I hope the moral victory was worth it." "It was," Aisha says, and means it. "Because I can still look at Grandma's picture and know I honored her. Can you say the same about your Michelin star?" Marcus hangs up without answering. At 10 a.m., Junha arrives at Nana's table to find Aisha sitting amid packed boxes, surrounded by the accumulated archaeology of 4 generations. Photographs carefully wrapped in newspaper. Her grandmother's cast-iron skillet cushioned in bubble wrap. The wooden spoon placed in a protective case like the sacred relic it is. "They accelerated it," Aisha says without preamble. 14 days. They're punishing me for making them look bad. Junha sits beside her among the boxes. "I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't walked through that door—" "Don't," Aisha interrupts. "Don't apologize for trying to be human. The system is sick, not you." They sit in silence for several minutes. Then, Junha speaks carefully, knowing what he's about to propose will either save everything or destroy what fragile trust they've built. "I have an idea. You're going to hate it, but hear me out." "I'm listening," Aisha says warily. "Marry me," Junha states. "Legally, with a prenuptial agreement that protects you. I still have personal assets separate from the company, about 63 million in various holdings. We structure a marriage contract where you maintain complete independence, but legally, my resources become available to fight the eviction. We hire the best real estate attorneys, file injunctions, drag this out in court long enough to build public pressure." Aisha stares at him. "You want to marry me, as a legal strategy?" "Yes," Junha confirms. "Purely transactional. 2-year contract. After that, clean divorce, no obligations. You keep the restaurant, I keep whatever's left of my dignity." The slap echoes in the empty restaurant. Not hard enough to hurt, but sharp enough to communicate exactly how insulting the proposal is. Aisha stands, voice shaking with fury. "Get out," she says. "Aisha," Junha begins. "Get out," she shouts, and it's the first time he's heard her raise her voice. "You think you can just buy your way into my life? You think marriage is another contract to negotiate? You think I'm so desperate that I'll accept being reduced to a legal transaction?" "I'm trying to help," Junha protests. "I'm offering you every resource I have." "I don't want your resources," Aisha interrupts, tears streaming now. "I wanted your heart, your actual heart. Not another billionaire solution wrapped in romantic packaging. Not another man who thinks money solves everything." "I'm not trying to solve you," Junha insists. "I'm trying to save you." "I don't need saving," Aisha explodes. "That's what every man in my life has failed to understand. My grandmother didn't need saving. She needed witnessing. She needed community. She needed people to show up not with solutions, but with presence. And I genuinely thought, you were finally learning that lesson." Junha stands, stung. "So what do you want from me? To just watch while they tear this place down? To hold your hand while you lose everything? How is that better than actually trying to fight?" "Because fighting together is different than you fighting for me," Aisha replies, voice breaking. "One is partnership. The other is performance. And I can't tell anymore which one you're offering." "I'm offering everything I have," Junha says quietly. "I lost my company. I'm about to lose my home. My reputation is destroyed. And I'm standing here offering you the only thing I have left, my name, my resources, my willingness to fight the system I helped build. Your name? Aisha laughs bitterly. You want me to take your name in a transactional marriage? You want me to become Mrs. Han for 2 years so you can feel like you saved the black woman? So you can add husband to your redemption resume? That's not what this is, Junha insists, but doubt creeps into his voice. Is she right? Is this just another performance? Another way of controlling the narrative instead of surrendering to it? Then what is it? Aisha demands. Tell me honestly, if we got married under these terms, would it be because you love me? Or because you need to prove you're different than the man who signed my eviction notice? The question hangs between them like a blade. Junha opens his mouth to answer and realizes he doesn't know. Does he love her? Or does he love who he becomes when he's with her? Is there a difference? I don't know, he admits finally. I don't know what love looks like. I've been empty so long, I can't tell if what I feel is love or just gratitude that someone made me feel anything at all. Aisha's anger softens into something worse. Pity. Then you need to figure that out before you propose marriage, even fake marriage. Because I won't be your emotional training wheels while you learn to be human. What do you want me to do? Junha asks, genuinely lost. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to be different. But every time I think I'm doing it right, I'm actually just repeating the same patterns in different packaging. I want you to leave, Aisha says gently now. Exhaustion replacing anger. I need space to think, to figure out how to fight this without losing myself in the process. And you need to figure out who you are without an empire or a rescue mission defining you. If I leave now, Junha warns, I might not get another chance to help. 14 days goes fast. Then it goes fast, Aisha replies. I'd rather lose honestly than win by compromising everything my grandmother taught me about dignity. Junha leaves without another word. Outside, the November air is cold and sharp, matching the ache in his chest. He walks through Bedford-Stuyvesant without direction, past brownstones being renovated for people who'll never know their histories, past corner stores replaced by artisanal coffee shops, past the slow erasure that he helped engineer for 3 decades without seeing the faces behind the addresses. His phone rings. Daniel. Dad, I just heard about the prenup proposal. Tyler told me. Aisha called him crying. Dad, what were you thinking? I was thinking I could save her, Junha admits. I was thinking that having resources and not using them to help would make me complicit. But Dad, Daniel says gently, you can't save people who don't need saving. You can only stand beside them while they save themselves. That's what being present means. When did you get so wise? Junha asks. When I stopped waiting for you to save our relationship and started building a new one from scratch, Daniel answers. Same lesson, different application. After they hang up, Junha finds himself at McCarran Park, the same spot where he and Daniel ate terrible kimbap and began reconstructing their connection. He sits on the same patch of grass and forces himself to answer Aisha's question honestly. Does he love her, or does he love who he becomes around her? The answer, when it comes, is humbling. He doesn't know her well enough to love her fully. Not yet. What he loves is the person she's helping him rediscover. The man who cooks his mother's soup, who laughs when flour explodes on his suit, who chooses messy humanity over polished success. What he loves is the possibility that he's not beyond redemption. But that's not the same as loving her, Aisha Howard, with her grandmother's wooden spoon and her refusal to be saved, her fierce protection of legacy, and her willingness to lose everything rather than compromise. That kind of love requires witnessing, not rescuing. It requires showing up without an agenda. It requires becoming the kind of person who folds dumplings badly and tries anyway, who washes dishes without expecting credit, who fights beside someone instead of fighting for them. At 6:47 p.m., Junha returns to Nana's table. The door is locked, but Aisha opens it when she sees him. Her eyes are red from crying. I'm not here to propose marriage, Junha says before she can speak. I'm here to apologize. You were right. I was trying to solve you instead of witness you. I was trying to prove I'm different instead of actually being different. Okay, Aisha says cautiously. So what are you doing here? I'm here to ask what you need, Junha replies simply. Not what I think you need. Not what I can afford to give. What you actually need. Aisha studies him for a long moment. Then she opens the door wider. I need help packing. I need someone to witness what's being lost. I need someone to sit with me in the grief instead of trying to fix it. Can you do that? Yes, Junha answers. I can do that. They spend the next 4 hours packing in near silence. Junha wraps dishes carefully, asks Aisha about the story behind each photograph before boxing it, holds space for her tears without trying to stop them. It's harder than any board meeting he's ever endured. This sitting with pain instead of solving it. This bearing witness instead of taking charge. But it's also the most human he's felt in decades. Just being present. Just showing up. Just folding cardboard boxes and letting Aisha grieve without making it about his redemption. At 10:52 p.m., surrounded by boxes and bubble wrap and the dismantled pieces of a legacy, Aisha finally speaks. Thank you for not trying to save me tonight. For just being here. It's the least I can do, Junha replies. And maybe, for once, the least is enough. Outside, Brooklyn sleeps fitfully. 13 days until eviction. No miracle solution. Just two people sitting among the ruins of what was, trying to figure out how to honor what's ending while imagining what might begin. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real love starts. Not in grand gestures or prenuptial agreements, but in the quiet choice to witness someone's pain without making it about your own redemption, even if witnessing is all you have left to offer. Thursday morning, 12 days before eviction, Marcus Howard makes a decision that will fracture his family permanently. He sits in his Michelin-starred restaurant during prep hours, surrounded by stainless steel and precision and the antiseptic perfection of fine dining, and he calls a lawyer. Not to help Aisha fight the eviction, to negotiate a deal that will preserve their grandmother's legacy in the only way he believes possible, by making it profitable. The lawyer he calls works for one of Junha's rivals, Chen Development Group, headed by the same Richard Chen, who orchestrated Junha's removal from HJ Min Holdings. Chen has been watching the Nana's Table situation with the calculated interest of a predator recognizing opportunity. If he can acquire the property and secure Marcus Howard, the award-winning chef, to create an elevated version of Nana's Table, he'll get prime Bedford-Stuyvesant real estate and a built-in narrative of cultural preservation. By noon, Marcus has signed a letter of intent. The terms are seductive. Chen Development will create a Nana's Table Heritage Collection. 3 upscale locations across Brooklyn, Manhattan, and eventually Los Angeles. Marcus will be executive chef and 30% owner, with complete creative control over menu development. The restaurants will feature respectful fusion of his grandmother's recipes with contemporary technique, essentially soul food that won't make white diners uncomfortable. Marcus tells himself this is preservation, that taking his grandmother's legacy and making it sustainable is better than watching it die in 14 days. That Aisha's stubbornness, her refusal to evolve, to adapt, to compromise, is actually what's killing their grandmother's dream. He tells himself these things with the conviction of someone who's been rehearsing the justification for weeks. He doesn't call Aisha before signing. Doesn't ask permission to commodify their grandmother's recipes. He just signs, and then he calls. Aisha is at Nana's table with Junha, continuing the painful process of packing 4 generations into cardboard boxes, when her phone rings. She sees Marcus's name and almost doesn't answer. They haven't spoken since the argument about her feeding the enemy, but family obligation is muscle memory stronger than resentment. I did something, Marcus says without preamble, voice carrying the particular defensiveness of someone who knows they've crossed a line. I made a deal. To save Grandma's legacy. Aisha's stomach drops. What kind of deal? Chen Development is creating a Nana's Table Heritage Collection. Marcus explains rapidly, words tumbling over each other. 3 restaurants. I'll be executive chef. We'll preserve Grandma's recipes but make them sustainable, accessible, elevated. You sold her recipes, Aisha interrupts, voice flat with disbelief. You sold Grandma's recipes to the same people who are evicting me. I'm preserving them, Marcus insists. You're letting them die out of pride. I'm making sure they survive, even if it's not in the exact format you worship. The exact format I worship? Aisha repeats, voice rising. You mean the format where we feed our community instead of gentrifying tourists? Where collard greens are cooked with love instead of plated for Instagram? Where the point is nourishment, not performance. The point is survival, Marcus counters. And your way isn't surviving, Aisha. You're getting evicted in 12 days. Grandma's table is dead. At least my way keeps something alive. It keeps a brand alive, Aisha corrects, tears streaming now. Not a legacy, a brand. You took everything Grandma stood for, community, resistance, feeding people who couldn't afford fancy restaurants, and you're selling it back to the system that killed her. I'm being realistic, Marcus argues. You're being stubborn, and stubbornness doesn't pay rent. Neither does betrayal, Aisha replies. Don't call me again, Marcus. You're not my brother anymore. My brother died the day he decided profit mattered more than principle. She hangs up. Junha, who heard the entire conversation, watches her collapse into a chair. Your brother sold the recipes? He asks carefully. He didn't just sell them, Aisha says through sobs. He sold them to Richard Chen, the man who destroyed you, the man who's evicting me. He made a deal with the devil and called it preservation. Can we stop it legally? Junha asks. The recipes, do you have documentation of ownership? Aisha laughs bitterly. They're grandmother's recipes, passed down orally, taught in kitchens, not documented in copyright offices. Marcus knows that. That's why he could take them without asking, because they belong to our family in spirit, but to no one in law. Junha sits beside her, not touching, just present. What do you need? I need to fight back, Aisha says, wiping her eyes with fierce determination. Not with lawyers, not with money, with the only thing they can't commodify, the actual community. The people who've been eating here for 40 years. The neighborhood that remembers what this place means. How? Junha asks. Aisha's eyes light with the particular fire of someone who's been pushed too far. We throw a Last Supper, a real one. We invite everyone, every family that's eaten here, every neighbor facing eviction, every person who remembers Bedford-Stuyvesant before the developers renamed it Bed-Stuy to make it sound hip. We cook every single one of Grandma's recipes. We tell every story. We document everything. And we show Chen and Marcus and everyone else that you can franchise a brand, but you can't franchise a legacy. When? Junha asks, already pulling out his phone to coordinate. Sunday, Aisha declares. 9 days before eviction, we invite the neighborhood. We cook for 100 people, and we let them witness what's being lost. The news of Marcus's betrayal spreads through the neighborhood faster than Aisha expected. By evening, her phone is flooded with calls. Mrs. Washington expressing outrage, Pastor Jerome offering church support, neighbors volunteering to help cook, organize, document. The community rallies not just around Nana's table, but around the principle it represents, that some things matter more than money, that legacy isn't something you franchise, that resistance sometimes looks like a dinner table. Daniel and Tyler arrive at 7 p.m. with a production crew, film students from NYU who want to document The Last Supper as a short film about gentrification and resistance. This is history, Daniel explains to Aisha. Whether you win or lose, people need to see what's being destroyed. They need to understand that every luxury condo represents a community table that doesn't exist anymore. That night, as Aisha and Junha plan the Last Supper menu, Marcus's betrayal transforms from wound into fuel. Every recipe they list is a choice. Not the elevated versions Marcus will serve to gentrifiers, But the original recipes, labor-intensive, time-consuming, impossible to scale, designed to feed community rather than impress critics. This is going to take 3 days to prep, Junha observes, looking at the menu. We'll need help. We'll have it, Aisha replies with certainty. That's the difference between Marcus's way and mine. He's building restaurants. I'm feeding family. And family shows up. She's right. By Friday morning, Nana's table has become a hive of activity. Neighbors arriving with ingredients, church ladies bringing their best serving dishes, teenagers offering to set tables, elders sharing stories for the documentary crew to record. The restaurant transforms from a space being packed up to die into a living archive of everything gentrification can't price. And Marcus, in his pristine, Michelin-starred kitchen, reads about the Last Supper on social media and realizes with cold clarity what he's done. He hasn't preserved their grandmother's legacy. He's stolen it and dressed it up in language that makes theft sound noble. He calls Aisha 3 times. She doesn't answer. The silence between them is now permanent, a severed connection that no apology can repair because some betrayals are too foundational to forgive. On Saturday evening, as prep intensifies for tomorrow's Last Supper, Marcus shows up at Nana's table unannounced. Aisha sees him through the window and locks the door. He knocks anyway. Aisha, please, Marcus calls through the glass. I need to talk to you. Junha appears beside Aisha. Do you want me to send him away? Aisha considers this. Part of her wants to refuse him entirely, to let him stand outside witnessing the community he abandoned. But another part, the part that still remembers the brother who learned to cook beside her in their grandmother's kitchen, needs to know. Does he understand what he's done? She unlocks the door. You have 5 minutes. Marcus enters cautiously, taking in the scene, the kitchen full of neighbors cooking, the dining room being transformed for tomorrow's feast, the documentary crew interviewing Mrs. Washington about the restaurant's history. He sees what he sold, what he tried to franchise, what can't actually be replicated no matter how much money Chen Development throws at it. I'm sorry, Marcus says, and his voice breaks. I thought I was saving Grandma's legacy, but watching this, seeing actual community instead of the sanitized version I pitched to investors, I realize I was just trying to save my own ego, trying to prove I could succeed on their terms instead of honoring her terms. You're right, Aisha replies without softness. You chose their approval over her legacy, and now you have to live with that. Can I help? Marcus asks desperately. Tomorrow, let me cook. Let me be part of this. Aisha looks at her brother, this man who shares her blood, but not her values, who learned the same recipes but forgot what they meant. No, she says finally. You made your choice. You're helping Chen create a brand. These are my grandmother's people creating a memory. You don't belong here anymore. Marcus nods, tears streaming. I understand. But Aisha, I'm going to withdraw from the deal. I'm going to tell Chen I can't do it. Not because it'll fix what I broke between us. It won't. But because I finally understand the difference between a restaurant and an altar. That won't stop Chen from developing the property, Aisha points out. Won't stop the eviction. Won't change anything except your conscience. I know, Marcus admits. But at least I'll stop being part of the machinery destroying us. That's not redemption. Just the bare minimum of not making it worse. He leaves without another word. Aisha watches him go, and she doesn't feel victory or satisfaction, just profound sadness that her brother had to lose everything to remember what their grandmother tried to teach them from childhood. That the point of cooking is love, not legacy, nourishment, not notoriety, feeding people, not feeding egos. Tomorrow, the Last Supper will gather everyone Marcus walked away from. And whether Nana's table survives the eviction or not, the community will witness what's being lost. We'll eat it, remember it, carry it forward in ways that can't be franchised or commodified or erased by development contracts. Because that's what resistance looks like when you've run out of legal options. You feed people. You tell stories. You create memories so vivid that even after the building is demolished, the table continues to exist in the hearts of everyone who sat at it. And you pray that memory is a form of immortality strong enough to survive gentrification. Sunday arrives with the particular weight of endings. Nana's table opens its doors for the Last Supper. Not a defeat, but a defiant celebration of everything gentrification can't price. Aisha has been cooking since 4 a.m., joined by an army of church ladies, neighbors, and volunteers who understand that this meal is more than food. It's documentation, resistance, a living archive of what's being destroyed. The menu is ambitious, deliberate, every signature dish from 4 generations of Howard women. Fried chicken using her great-great-grandmother's technique, perfected in 1923. Collard greens that require 6 hours and patience her great-grandmother learned during the Depression. Macaroni and cheese with the particular ratio of sharp cheddar to smoked Gouda that her grandmother guarded like state secrets. Cornbread with honey butter. Sweet potato pie. Black-eyed peas cooked with ham hocks. Oxtail stew. Every dish tells a story of survival, adaptation, women who fed communities through Jim Crow and redlining, and every wave of displacement Brooklyn could engineer. Junha works the kitchen like he's been doing it for years instead of weeks. He preps vegetables with the focused intensity of someone who's finally found purpose beyond profit. Daniel and Tyler coordinate the documentary crew. 3 cameras capturing everything, audio equipment recording stories, photographers documenting faces. Mrs. Washington holds court at her usual table, surrounded by neighborhood elders who remember when Bedford-Stuyvesant was affordable, when black families could buy brownstones, when community wasn't a luxury amenity, but a lived reality. By 3:00 p.m., the line stretches around the block. Over 200 people have come, some who've eaten at Nana's table for decades, others who heard about the Last Supper on social media and recognized it as the kind of history you witness in person. Press arrives too. Local news channels, food bloggers, activists documenting gentrification, journalists who understand that this meal is a political act disguised as dinner. Aisha has set one rule. No one eats alone. Every table must be shared. Strangers sitting beside neighbors. Generations mixing. Stories exchanged over plates that steam with ancestral knowledge. The documentary crew circulates, asking questions. What does this restaurant mean to you? What are we losing when places like this disappear? How do we resist when resistance looks impossible? Pastor Jerome offers a blessing before the meal begins. Lord, we gather today not to mourn, but to remember, to testify, to witness that what we're losing isn't just a building. It's a table where our community has been fed, body and soul, for 4 generations. We ask that you bless this food, these hands that prepared it, and these hearts that refuse to forget what's being destroyed in the name of progress. Amen. Amen, echoes through the restaurant like prayer and protest combined. The meal unfolds over 4 hours. Plates circulate endlessly. Aisha and her volunteer army cooking in shifts to keep food coming, hot and honest, and made with the kind of love that can't be replicated in franchise kitchens. Between courses, people stand to tell stories. Mrs. Washington recounts how Nana's table fed civil rights organizers in the 1960s, how strategy sessions happened over fried chicken and collard greens, how food sustained movements. A young mother describes bringing her newborn here for the first time, how Aisha cooked special meals during her pregnancy, how this restaurant taught her that community means feeding each other through every life stage. An elderly man remembers Aisha's grandmother, Esther, how she'd cook extra on Thanksgiving and Christmas, packaging meals for families who couldn't afford celebration, never asking for recognition or repayment. A teenager talks about coming here after school, how Aisha helped with homework while serving sweet tea, how this space taught him that he mattered beyond test scores and standardized measurements. Each story adds another layer to the archive. Proof that what's being demolished isn't just real estate, but the infrastructure of community that gentrification treats as expendable. At 6:30 p.m., something unexpected happens. Marcus arrives. He's not in chef whites, just jeans and a plain shirt, carrying a box. Aisha sees him hovering in the doorway, uncertain whether he's welcome. She doesn't invite him in. But she doesn't send him away either. Marcus approaches slowly. "I know I don't belong here," he says quietly. "But I brought something. Grandma's original notebooks. The ones she left me. Every recipe. Every story she wrote down. I want you to have them. Not because it fixes what I did, but because they belong with you, not with me." Aisha takes the box without speaking. Inside are their grandmother's handwritten recipe books, decades of accumulated wisdom, annotated with notes and memories. She looks at her brother, this man who betrayed her and is now trying to make partial amends. "Thank you," she says finally. "But Marcus, this doesn't mean you're forgiven. It just means you're finally understanding what you almost sold." "I know," Marcus replies. "And for what it's worth, I withdrew from the Chen deal, told them I couldn't do it. They're threatening to sue me for breach of contract, but I don't care. Some things cost more than money." Aisha nods, and in that gesture is the faintest possibility of eventual reconciliation. Not now, maybe not for years, but someday when the wound has scarred enough to touch without bleeding. At 8 p.m., after the last plate has been served and the kitchen has finally stilled, Aisha stands before the gathered community. 200 people, bellies full, hearts heavy with the knowledge that this is the last time they'll gather in this space. "My grandmother used to say," Aisha begins, voice steady despite tears streaming, "that food is how we remember who we are when the world tries to make us forget. For 4 generations this table has fed you, not just your bodies, but your spirits. And in 8 days, they're tearing this building down to build luxury condos that none of us can afford. But here's what they can't tear down: memory." She holds up her grandmother's wooden spoon, the same one that's cooked 10,000 meals, the same one that appears in photographs spanning 80 years. This spoon has fed generations, and it will keep feeding, because I'm not stopping. I don't know where yet. Maybe someone's backyard, maybe a church basement, maybe a community center. But the table continues, because the table is us. They can destroy the building, but they can't destroy what we've built here. This community that refuses to let each other starve, literally or spiritually. The room erupts in applause, tears, affirmations. Mrs. Washington stands, voice carrying the authority of 7 decades of activism. "And we're going to make sure she has somewhere to cook, because the East New York Community Land Trust has been watching this fight. And we want to offer Aisha space in our cooperative, community-owned land that can't be sold to developers, can't be gentrified, can't be taken." Aisha stares, not daring to hope. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Mrs. Washington confirms. "It won't be this building. It'll be smaller. But it'll be ours, really ours, held in trust for the community forever. You interested?" "Yes," Aisha breathes. "God, yes." Junha, watching from the kitchen doorway, feels something fundamental shift. He lost his empire trying to save this place through money and power. But the actual solution came from community, from people organizing, pooling resources, creating infrastructure that resists gentrification by removing land from speculation entirely. He spent 30 years building the wrong thing. But watching this, watching community save itself, he finally understands what his mother tried to teach him: that the only sustainable wealth is the kind you share. The Last Supper extends past midnight. People don't want to leave, don't want to admit this is ending. But eventually, slowly, the restaurant empties. Aisha stands in the center of the dining room, surrounded by dirty dishes and the lingering smell of food, and the particular exhaustion of having given everything. Junha approaches with a dish towel. "Ready to wash dishes?" Aisha laughs through tears. "That's your solution to everything now, isn't it? Wash dishes and hope clarity comes." "It usually does," Junha replies. And there's such peace in his voice that Aisha realizes he's not trying to save her anymore. He's just standing beside her while she saves herself. They wash dishes together until 2 a.m. And somewhere in the steam and soap and silence, Aisha understands that this this witnessing, this presence, this man who lost everything and found himself in the loss. This might actually be love. Not the dramatic kind that arrives with grand gestures and prenuptial agreements, but the quiet kind that shows up in kitchens at 2 a.m., washing dishes because you know someone needs company more than solutions. 8 days until eviction. But for the first time since this began, Aisha believes that endings and beginnings might be the same thing. Just depends on whether you're brave enough to keep setting the table. Monday morning arrives with the peculiar clarity that follows exhaustion. Aisha wakes on the couch in Nana's table. She's been sleeping here for the past week, unable to leave, wanting every remaining hour in the space that holds 4 generations of memory. Junha is already in the kitchen, making coffee in her grandmother's old percolator. He slept in the dining room, she realizes. His suit jacket folded over a chair, shoes lined up neatly by the door. "You stayed," Aisha observes. "You needed someone to lock the door after you fell asleep." Junha replies simply. "And I didn't want to go back to the penthouse. It doesn't feel like home. Nothing has felt like home except here." They drink coffee in companionable silence. 7 days until eviction. The community land trust offer is real, but it will take months to finalize. Permits, legal paperwork, funding, construction on the new space. In the meantime, Nana's table as they know it will be demolished. "What will you do for those months?" Junha asks. "While they're preparing the new space?" Aisha has been thinking about this. Pop-ups, community dinners in different locations, church basements, parks, people's backyards. Keep the table going even without walls. What about you? What will you do now that you're not a CEO? Junha laughs softly. "I have no idea. I've been a CEO or working toward being a CEO since I was 22. I don't know who I am without that identity." "You're a man who can fold dumplings terribly," Aisha offers with a gentle smile. "Who cooks his mother's soup, who washes dishes for 4 hours without complaining. That's not nothing." "It's not a career," Junha points out. "Maybe careers are overrated," Aisha suggests. "Maybe purpose matters more than title. You spent 30 years building an empire. Maybe the next 30 are about building community instead." At 10 a.m., Daniel arrives with news. The documentary from the Last Supper has been edited into a short film. Tyler submitted it to film festivals, but more importantly, posted it online. Within 12 hours, it's been viewed 340,000 times. Comments flood in, people sharing their own stories of displacement, restaurants they've lost to gentrification, the slow erasure of communities in the name of development. "It's going viral," Daniel explains, showing them the metrics. "Not just locally, nationally. People are angry. They're organizing. There's a petition to halt the eviction that has 80,000 signatures." "Will it work?" Aisha asks, not daring to hope. "Probably not," Daniel admits honestly. Chen Development has the legal right to proceed, but it's making them look terrible. Their stock dropped 4% yesterday. Shareholders are questioning whether this is worth the PR nightmare. Junha understands corporate psychology. They won't reverse course, but they might delay. Buy time for you to transition to the community land trust space without interruption. At noon, Junha gets a call from Richard Chen himself. He puts it on speaker so Aisha can hear. "Junha," Chen begins, voice carefully neutral. "I'm calling to offer you an opportunity. Return as consultant. Advise on community relations. Help us navigate this PR disaster you helped create. Generous compensation. 6-month contract." "In exchange for what?" Junha asks. "In exchange for making this Bedford-Stuyvesant situation go away quietly," Chen answers. "You convince the restaurant owner to accept a settlement. We delay demolition 3 months, give her time to relocate. Everyone wins." Junha looks at Aisha, who's shaking her head vehemently. He smiles. Not at Chen's offer, but at how clearly he knows his answer now. 6 months ago, he would have negotiated terms, calculated advantage, treated this as strategy. Now it just feels grotesque. "No," Junha says simply. "No?" Chen repeats, surprised. Junha, you've lost everything. Your company, your reputation, your fortune. Most of it tied up in legal battles. I'm offering you a way back. I don't want a way back, Junha replies. I want to keep moving forward. And forward doesn't include selling out the only person who taught me what it means to be human. He hangs up. Aisha stares at him. You just turned down a 6-month salary that probably would have been 7 figures. Yes, Junha confirms. And it felt better than any deal I closed in 30 years. What now? Aisha asks. Now, Junha says, rolling up his sleeves. We finish packing. We document every inch of this place. We prepare for the eviction. And we start planning the first pop-up dinner. Because if the table continues, that's victory, regardless of what happens to this building. They spend the rest of the day working in synchronized silence. No grand declarations, no emotional processing, just the quiet labor of honoring what's ending while preparing for what's next. Junha photographs every corner of the restaurant. Aisha boxes her grandmother's dishes with the reverent care of someone handling sacred objects. Daniel and Tyler create a digital archive, 360-degree video, audio recordings of the kitchen sounds, testimonials from neighbors. At 6 p.m., Mrs. Washington arrives with Pastor Jerome and a delegation from the Community Land Trust. They've brought blueprints for the new space, smaller than Nana's table, but designed with input from Aisha, preserving the essential elements: a community dining room, a large kitchen built for volume, walls designated for photographs and memory. Construction starts in 2 weeks, Mrs. Washington explains. We fast-tracked permits, called in favors. The space should be ready in 4 months. Can you survive 4 months of pop-ups? Yes, Aisha answers without hesitation. If I have help. You'll have help, Pastor Jerome assures. Every church in Bedford-Stuyvesant is offering space for dinners. We've created a rotation schedule. You'll cook at a different location every week. Keep the community fed while the new Nana's table is being built. Junha listens to this organizing, this practical grassroots infrastructure building, and recognizes something he spent decades ignoring: that real power doesn't come from capital, but from people choosing to take care of each other. All his corporate deals, all his strategic acquisitions, all his empire building accomplished less actual good than these church basements and community land trusts and neighbors pooling resources to ensure no one starves. That evening, after everyone leaves, Aisha finds Junha standing in the empty dining room. The boxes are stacked, the walls bare where photographs used to hang, the space already looking more like a memory than a place. You okay? She asks. I was just thinking, Junha replies, about the first night I came here. How I walked in with a briefcase and an eviction notice, thinking I could buy my way into your life. How arrogant I was. How empty. And now? Aisha prompts. Now I'm still empty-handed, Junha admits. No company, no empire, no grand solution to save this place. But I'm not empty. For the first time in 30 years, I'm full of things I can't quantify or leverage or put in a portfolio. Full of knowing that I showed up, that I tried, that I chose people over profit, even when it cost everything. Aisha steps closer, and in the empty restaurant with its ghosts and its promises, she does something she's been afraid to do. She kisses him. Not dramatically, not as performance, just a simple kiss that tastes like exhaustion and hope, and the particular intimacy of 2 people who've washed dishes together at 2 a.m. What was that for? Junha asks when they part. For being here, Aisha answers. For staying. For washing 4 hours of dishes without expecting credit. For losing your empire and finding your humanity. For teaching me that maybe redemption is real, even for people who've spent decades being complicit in harm. I haven't redeemed anything yet, Junha protests. I couldn't stop the eviction, couldn't save this building, couldn't use my power to fix anything because I don't have power anymore. You did something better, Aisha corrects. You witnessed. You showed up not with solutions, but with presence. You let me grieve without trying to fix it. You learned to cook, not because it was strategic, but because it connected you to your mother. You chose to wash dishes with me instead of negotiating deals across boardroom tables. That's not redemption, that's transformation. And transformation matters more. They stand in the empty restaurant, holding each other, and outside Brooklyn continues its relentless transformation. But inside this soon-to-be demolished space, two people have found something that gentrification can't touch. The knowledge that who you become matters more than what you build. 7 days until eviction. But for the first time, that deadline feels less like an ending and more like a transition. Painful but necessary. The way flour has to be kneaded roughly before it becomes bread. And maybe that's what love is in the age of gentrification. Not saving each other, but bearing witness to each other's transformations. Not grand gestures, but showing up day after day to wash dishes and fold dumplings badly and cook soup that tastes like coming home. Even when home is about to be demolished. Even when all you have left is each other and the community that refuses to let you starve. Even then. Especially then. The final week passes in a blur of endings and beginnings. Chen development, facing mounting public pressure and a viral documentary that won't stop spreading, offers one concession. Aisha has 2 additional weeks beyond the eviction date to fully relocate, and they'll pay for professional movers. It's not justice, but it's acknowledgement. A corporation admitting, however reluctantly, that optics matter even when contracts don't require compassion. Junha spends these days in a strange liminal space. He's no longer CEO, no longer billionaire in any practical sense. His assets are tied up in legal battles. His penthouse will be vacated by month's end. His reputation among former colleagues is irrevocably damaged. But he's also more present than he's been in decades. He helps Aisha plan pop-up dinners. He coordinates with the Community Land Trust on construction timelines. He continues learning to cook, not his mother's recipes now, but Aisha's grandmother's, earning the right to carry forward a legacy that isn't his by blood, but might be his by choice. Daniel visits almost daily. The relationship he and Junha are building is imperfect, tentative, marked by decades of disappointment that can't be erased in weeks. But it's real. Father and son learning to be honest with each other. Learning that connection requires vulnerability more than perfection. "I'm proud of you, Dad," Daniel says on Thursday, 5 days before the final eviction date. "Not because you succeeded, because you failed spectacularly and kept showing up anyway." "That's a low bar for pride," Junha replies with self-deprecating humor. "It's the only bar that matters," Daniel counters. "Anyone can succeed when conditions are favorable. The real test is what you do when you've lost everything and still have to get out of bed in the morning." On Friday, Aisha holds the first pop-up dinner at Pastor Jerome's church. 75 people attend. Some familiar faces from Nana's table, others new, drawn by the documentary and the story of resistance it tells. The menu is simpler than the Last Supper, constrained by church kitchen equipment and volunteer capacity, but the spirit is identical. Food as resistance, as memory, as the tangible proof that community survives even when buildings don't. Junha works the serving line, ladling soup with the focused attention of someone who's finally found purpose. A woman in her 60s thanks him for his generosity. He almost corrects her. "I'm not generous. I just finally stopped being selfish." But realizes she's not thanking him for money. She's thanking him for showing up, for being present, for treating her like a human being worthy of eye contact and a full ladle. That's when it clicks fully. The fortune he spent 30 years building was worthless compared to the presence he's learning to offer now. All those zeros in his bank account, all those properties and developments and strategic acquisitions, they bought power but not connection, influence but not intimacy, success but not significance. On Saturday, Marcus contacts Aisha through a mutual friend. He's asking, not demanding, asking, if he can attend the next pop-up dinner. Not to cook, not to participate, just to witness. Aisha considers this carefully. Her anger hasn't disappeared, but it's transformed into something more complex. Recognition that her brother is trying, clumsily and late, to understand what he almost destroyed. He can come, she tells the mutual friend. But he sits in the back. He eats what everyone else eats. And if he tries to offer advice or critique or anything resembling the chef he became instead of the grandson Grandma raised, he leaves. Sunday, 2 days before final eviction, the community gathers one more time at Nana's table. Not for a meal, the kitchen has been packed, but for a closing ceremony. Mrs. Washington leads it with the gravitas of someone who's witnessed too many displacements to romanticize loss. "We're not here to mourn," she announces to the 50 people crowded into the empty space. "We're here to promise that what happened here doesn't end here. That in 4 months, when the new Nana's Table opens on community land that can never be sold to developers, we'll carry these stories forward. We'll feed the next generation. We'll remember that resistance looks like a dinner table." People take turns speaking. Pastor Jerome prays for the building's next incarnation, hoping luxury condos will somehow house people who learn to value community over exclusivity. Daniel reads statistics about displacement in Brooklyn. How many Black families have been forced out? How many businesses closed? How gentrification isn't a natural force but a policy choice. Tyler performs a song he wrote about Nana's Table, about his own mother's kitchen in the Bronx, about how food carries memory across displacement. And Aisha, standing in the center of the empty dining room with her grandmother's wooden spoon, offers the final testimony. 4 generations of Howard women stood in that kitchen and refused to let their community starve. They cooked through Jim Crow and redlining and every wave of displacement. And I promise you, on this spoon, on my grandmother's grave, on everything she taught me about what it means to feed people, I promise you that this table continues. Not in this building, but in every church basement and park and backyard where we gather to eat together. The table is not wood and nails. The table is us. And us, they can't evict. The ceremony ends with silence. Not sad silence, but the charged quiet of collective resolve. Then, spontaneously, someone begins singing. An old gospel song. Something about crossing over, about promised lands, about journeys that look like endings but are actually transformations. Others join until the empty restaurant fills with voices that have survived worse than this. Junha, standing beside Aisha, feels tears streaming for the 100th time since walking through these doors. But these tears are different. Not grief or shame, but something like gratitude. Gratitude that he lost his empire before it was too late to become human. Gratitude that Aisha fed him when he deserved nothing. Gratitude that his mother's recipe led him home, even though home turned out to be a place he'd never been. That night, their last in the building, Aisha and Junha sit on the floor of the empty dining room. No furniture remains, no dishes, no photographs. Everything packed and stored, waiting for the new space. They lean against each other, exhausted and strangely peaceful. "What do you think your grandmother would say about all this?" Junha asks. Aisha considers this. "She'd say, 'Baby, you did good. You fed people. You told the truth. You didn't let them break you, even when they broke everything around you. That's all anyone can do.' And about me?" Junha presses. "What would she say about the billionaire who showed up trying to buy her legacy?" "She'd say," Aisha replies with a soft smile, "That boy's got flour on his suit." Finally, they sleep that night in the empty restaurant, wrapped in moving blankets, holding each other against the cold. And when they wake on eviction day, they're ready. Not happy, not victorious, but ready. Ready to release what's ending, ready to build what's next, ready to keep setting the table even when the walls come down. Because that's what love does in the age of gentrification. It shows up. It bears witness. It washes dishes and folds dumplings badly and keeps cooking even when there's no building left to cook in. And it trusts that presence is worth more than any fortune. Every time. 6 months later, the new Nana's Table opens on a Saturday in May, and the line stretches 3 blocks before doors even open. The building is smaller than the original, a renovated community space on land owned by the East New York Community Land Trust, protected permanently from speculation and gentrification. The walls are covered with photographs from 4 generations, the same ones that hung in the old location, plus new images from the Last Supper, the pop-up dinners, the months of community organizing that made this reopening possible. Aisha stands in the kitchen at 5:47 a.m., hands moving with the practiced rhythm of someone who's cooked 10,000 meals. Beside her, Junha preps vegetables with focused attention. He's not graceful yet, probably never will be, but he's consistent. His hands carry small scars now, evidence of knife slips and hot pan encounters, the physical marks of learning to create instead of just acquire. The restaurant operates under a new model, community-owned cooperative, with Aisha as managing member and 15 community shareholders who invested small amounts, $50 to $200 each, to ensure the space belongs to the neighborhood, not to any individual. Junha contributed the largest share from what remains of his fortune, but his ownership stake is identical to everyone else's. 1 vote, equal voice, no special privileges. Nervous? Junha asks as they work. Terrified, Aisha admits. What if people expect the old location? What if this space doesn't carry the same spirit? The spirit isn't in the walls, Junha reminds her gently. Your grandmother taught you that. The spirit is in what you cook and why you cook it. That hasn't changed. At 7 a.m., volunteers start arriving. Church ladies, neighbors, teenagers who helped during the pop-up months, and now consider themselves part of Nana's table family. Daniel and Tyler show up with coffee and pastries from a Black-owned bakery in Crown Heights. Mrs. Washington arrives in her signature purple, already claiming her usual corner table. This is smaller than the old place, Mrs. Washington observes, looking around critically. But it's ours, Aisha replies. Really ours? Community land trust means no landlord can evict us. No developer can buy the building out from under us. We own this collectively, permanently. Mrs. Washington nods slowly, and then she smiles. The particular smile of someone who's fought gentrification for 5 decades and rarely wins. Your grandmother would be proud, not because you saved the restaurant, because you transformed it, made it stronger, built something that can't be commodified or franchised or erased by real estate speculation. At 11 a.m., they open doors. The crowd surges in. Familiar faces from the old Nana's table, people who attended pop-up dinners, activists who followed the story online, neighbors who understand that this reopening represents more than one restaurant. It represents proof that communities can fight gentrification and win, even if victory looks different than expected. The menu is both familiar and evolved. All of Aisha's grandmother's signature dishes, prepared exactly as they've always been. But also new items, collaborative creations developed during the pop-up months, fusion dishes that honor multiple traditions. Kimchi collard greens have become a permanent fixture, a reminder of the unlikely alliance that started this transformation. Marcus arrives at 1 p.m. He's not in chef whites, just civilian clothes, carrying flowers for Aisha. She sees him through the window, and her first instinct is still anger. But it's softened now by time and distance. She invites him in. Congratulations, Marcus says quietly. The place is beautiful. Grandma would love it. Thank you, Aisha replies, accepting the flowers. You want to eat? Can I? Marcus asks, uncertain. Everyone eats here, Aisha answers. That's the rule, always has been. Marcus sits at a table in the back, and Aisha serves him personally. A plate of their grandmother's fried chicken, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, cornbread. He eats slowly, tears streaming, tasting everything he almost destroyed. When he finishes, he finds Aisha in the kitchen. I'm sorry, he says for the 100th time. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I know, Aisha replies. And Marcus? I'm starting to forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, It wasn't. But because holding on to anger was poisoning me more than it was hurting you. Can I help? Marcus asks. Not as executive chef, not with creative control, just as your brother, washing dishes, prepping vegetables, whatever you need. Aisha considers this carefully. Wednesday and Thursday mornings, 6 a.m. You show up, you work, you don't critique, you don't suggest improvements, you just help. Think you can do that? Yes, Marcus answers. Thank you. It's not full reconciliation. That will take years, maybe a lifetime. But it's a beginning, the same way everything about the new Nana's table is a beginning. At 4:00 p.m., Daniel unveils a surprise. The documentary he created, now a feature-length film called The Table Continues, has been accepted to the Tribeca Film Festival. It will premiere in 2 weeks, with proceeds going to support community land trusts across New York City. You did this? Aisha asks, overwhelmed. We did this, Daniel corrects. Everyone who showed up, who cooked, who organized, who refused to let this place die. I just filmed it. Junha watches his son with a pride he's still learning to express. Their relationship is different now, not perfect, but honest. They have dinner together twice a week, sometimes at Nana's table, sometimes at the modest Brooklyn apartment Junha now rents. He's no longer a billionaire, no longer a CEO, no longer the man his mother mourned. He works part-time as a community organizing consultant, helping other neighborhoods resist gentrification. The pay is modest, the work is unglamorous, but it's the first job in 30 years that lets him sleep without shame. At 7 p.m., as the dinner rush peaks, Junha is carrying a tray of dirty dishes when he stumbles. The tray tips, and soup splashes across his shirt. The same charcoal shirt from the first night, now worn soft from 6 months of constant use, already stained with flour and oil, and the accumulated evidence of learning to be useful. He freezes for a moment, old instincts screaming disaster. But then Aisha laughs from across the dining room. That same full-throated, genuine laugh from the night he destroyed dumplings. And Mrs. Washington laughs. And Pastor Jerome laughs. And the entire restaurant fills with laughter that's not mocking but affectionate. The laughter of community witnessing someone who's learned that mess is part of being alive. Junha looks down at his stained shirt, at the soup dripping onto his shoes, and he laughs too. Really laughs from his belly, the way he hasn't laughed since childhood. Because he finally understands the title of this whole impossible journey. Flour on his suit, joy on her face. Dinner healed what money couldn't. The flour, the mess, the mistakes, the willingness to be imperfect in public, that's what made healing possible. Not his money, not his power, not his strategic planning. Just showing up with clean hands and a willingness to get them dirty. That evening, after closing, Aisha and Junha stand in the kitchen of the new Nana's table. The space is smaller, the equipment is older, the neighborhood is different. But the wooden spoon hangs on the wall. Photographs of 4 generations watch from every surface, and the smell of food cooked with love lingers in the air. We did it, Aisha says softly. We actually saved this. You saved this, Junha corrects. I just learned to wash dishes. No, Aisha replies, turning to face him. We saved this. Together. Messily. Imperfectly. But together. She kisses him. Not their first kiss, but the first one that tastes like possibility instead of survival. The first one that happens in a space they've built together, that belongs to community, that represents a future where love and justice might coexist. What happens now? Junha asks when they part. Now we cook, Aisha answers simply. We feed people. We tell stories. We keep setting the table. That's all we've ever done. That's all we need to do. For how long? For as long as people need feeding, Aisha replies. Which is forever. They clean the kitchen together. A ritual they've performed hundreds of times now, washing dishes side by side in companionable silence. Outside, Brooklyn transforms endlessly, gentrification advancing and communities resisting in the eternal dance of urban change. But inside the new Nana's table, on land that can't be bought or sold or stolen, two people have learned the only lesson that matters: that presence is worth more than any fortune, that mess is part of becoming real, that dinner can heal what money broke, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the billionaire who walks through your door carrying an eviction notice might be carrying something else too. The capacity to change, the willingness to learn, the desperate hunger to remember what it means to be human. You just have to be brave enough to feed him, to teach him that flour on his suit is a badge of honor, not shame, to show him that washing dishes at 2 a.m. is worth more than closing billion-dollar deals, to love him not despite his brokenness, but through it. Because love in the age of gentrification doesn't look like rescue or salvation. It looks like two people standing side by side in a kitchen, hands wet with dishwater, hearts full of something that can't be commodified or franchised or erased by development contracts. It looks like flour on his suit, always, and joy on her face finally, and a table that continues, forever. 1 year later, a postscript, the community land trust model spreads. Inspired by Nana's table's success, 3 more restaurants open on collectively owned land across Brooklyn. Junha consults on each project, using his decades of real estate knowledge to help communities navigate legal complexities and resist displacement. He's not a billionaire anymore, but he's finally useful. Daniel's documentary wins awards and sparks a national conversation about gentrification, food justice, and community resistance. He's offered a position teaching documentary filmmaking at NYU, which he accepts. Tyler's music about Black Asian solidarity becomes an anthem for coalition-building movements across the country. Marcus opens a small restaurant in Harlem. Not Michelin-starred, just honest food cooked with the integrity his grandmother tried to teach him. He and Aisha have dinner together once a month, slowly rebuilding what betrayal fractured. It's not perfect, but it's real. Mrs. Washington celebrates her 72nd birthday at Nana's table, surrounded by 4 generations of community members she's organized, fed, and protected. She gives a speech about the long arc of resistance, about how victory looks different than expected, about how the most radical thing you can do is refuse to stop caring. And Aisha and Junha, they cook. Every morning, they arrive at Nana's table before dawn. Every evening, they close the restaurant long after dark. Between those hours, they feed hundreds of people, some who can pay, some who can't. Everyone welcome at the table that refuses to disappear. On a Tuesday in March, 2 years after Junha first walked through Nana's table carrying an eviction notice, Aisha finds him in the kitchen making galbatang from his mother's recipe. He doesn't need instructions anymore. His hands remember, his heart knows. The soup tastes exactly like home. "What's the occasion?" Aisha asks. "No occasion," Junha replies. "Just wanted to cook something that reminds me where I came from, and where I'm going." "And where are you going?" Aisha prompts with a smile. Junha looks around the kitchen, at the cooperative they've built, at the community they serve, at the woman who taught him that flour on your suit means you're finally doing something real. "Nowhere," he answers. "I'm finally home." And he is. Not in the penthouse he lost, not in the empire he abandoned, not in the life he built on money and power, and the systematic displacement of communities like this one. But here, in a small kitchen on community-owned land, wearing a shirt permanently stained with flour and soup and evidence of learning to be human. Here, where dinner heals what money broke. Here, where the table continues, always. Here, where love tastes like galbatang and collard greens and every impossible fusion that happens when people choose connection over conquest. Here, home. Finally.